and a video recording will be posted online shortly after the meeting. Well, good morning everyone. Can I extend a warm welcome to you all for this, our last full council of the year. Sadly, due to the pandemic, we are not having our usual children's entertainment, the visit from our special guest as well. Could I give all school pupils, their parents, teachers and staff my best wishes for Christmas and my sincere thanks to all those in education who have worked tirelessly to ensure that despite all the disruptions we have gone through, they have tried to minimise the adverse effects on the pupils and keep the situation as normal as possible. This can be said of all departments of this council who have done an incredible job during this time. I would also like to express my sincere condolences to those who have lost loved ones due to COVID and to those in care homes that have been so seriously affected. My heartfelt thanks to those care workers who are experiencing firsthand the horrors of COVID, but who continue, like those in the NHS, to put themselves at risk to help others. Since the outbreak of COVID, many people have lost loved ones, not just to COVID, and it's been heartbreaking for their families and friends because of restrictions they could not give them normal funerals, and it has made it impossible to allow them to grieve properly. I'm saddened that we have lost our security man, Mr. Ian Irvin from Shield Hill, who sadly recently passed away, and also community activist Aileen Amos, so well known, who has worked tirelessly in the community of Airth for many years. Our thoughts and condolences to both families. The Provost appeal is still carrying on, and this year's donations can be made online to help children in the area have a Merry Christmas. I'll now revert to today's agenda. Before I do, I would like to take this opportunity to wish you and your families and friends and the people of Falkirk District a Merry Christmas and a hopeful New Year, that we can bring an end to this pandemic and return to some kind of normality. We'll now go to the Sederin, and I'd like to call Mr. Moody. Thank you, Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Provost. Provost Buchanan.
Present.
Deputy Provost Ritchie.
Present.
Councillor Aitchison.
Yep.
Present. Councillor Alexander.
Councillor Alexander is currently having to take an emergency call, but he is logged in and he will join us as soon as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Balfour.
Present.
Councillor Binney.
Present.
Councillor Bissett.
Present.
Councillor Black.
Present.
Councillor Blackwood.
Present.
Councillor Bowes.
Present.
Councillor Coleman.
Present.
Colley.
Present.
Councillor Coombs.
Present.
Councillor Flynn.
Present.
Councillor Garn.
Present.
Councillor Goldie. I can see Councillor Goldie on the screen. Present. Councillor Grant.
Present.
Harris.
Present.
Councillor Hughes.
Present.
Councillor Kerr.
Here.
Councillor McHugh.
Present.
Councillor McCluckie.
Here.
Councillor Meadow.
Present.
Councillor Monroe.
Present.
Chop.
Cool. Nickel. I can see Councillor Nicol on the screen. Present. Councillor Nimmo.
Present.
Councillor Patrick.
Present.
Councillor Reid. Present. And Councillor Spears.
Present.
Thank you.
That takes us now to item 2 on your agenda, declaration of interest. And just for clarity, I'll read this out. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Have we any declarations at this time? Have you just put your hand up? Binny?
Item 6 on the agenda. I'm a member of Falkirk Community Trust. A director on it, I should say.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else?
Councillor Spears.
Councillor Spears.
The same declaration of interest, item 6, Falkirk Community Trust.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Coleman?
Councillor Coleman has the same declaration of interest for the Community Trust.
Thank you. Anybody else?
As does, sorry.
Councillor Flynn?
Coombs.
Yeah, the same for me, Provost.
Okay, and Councillor Coombs? Same as?
Provost. Yep.
Thank you.
Provost. Councillor Patrick, I'd like to, I have a member of the family employed with the trust.
Okay, thank you. Is that all the declarations? There will be an opportunity when they come to an item if you want to declare then, but we'll move on then. That takes us to item 3, which is the minutes and information bulletin. We start with 3A, is the minute of meeting of Falkirk Council held on the 30th of September 2020, pages 3 to 23 in your papers. Have we any questions arising from the minute of that meeting? None? Have we agreed the minute? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us to item 3B, which is the volume of minutes, volume 1, 2020-21. Any questions arising from that volume of minutes? None? Thank you for that. Takes you to item 3C, Information Bulletin, Volume 1, 2020-21. Any questions arising? Councillor Kerr, and could you give us the page number, sir?
Yes, Provost. First, I've got a few questions, Provost. First one is page 23.
23.
And it's on the Whitecross development where it's saying H29 the application for how we refused appeal and process. Is this still the case, or has it been heard and refused or upheld?
Okay, is Mr. Duff there? Mr. Duff, could you answer that question, please, sir?
There is an application pending which has been considered by the planning committee, and there has been a call for further information from the developer. That information is being received and it's being considered by our officers, so that's underway at the present time. I would need to check the specific point about the progress of the appeal. There have been previous appeals have taken place in regard to that site. So I can get a further status update on that specific position, but obviously that has to some extent been superseded by the sitting application. So I can.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Kerr, any other questions?
Yes, I don't know if that's the application I was talking about, Provost. I'm quite happy for Mr. Duff to come back with which one they actually mean.
Okay, thank you. I see her. Right.
On
Councillor Kerr, any other question?
I've loads of questions, Provost. Bear with me, just page 26. For Crest H21, it's the council's mind to grant 81 houses subject conclusion is section 75. I take it that's wrong.
We'll get some clarity on that. Would it be Mr. Duff?
It probably does need to be updated with the latest circumstances regarding that site, where it is intended to bring forward a further report to the planning committee. So I would look to get that amended following this meeting with the current position.
Thank you, Mr. Duff.
Thank you.
On page 33, Provost. On Grand Sable site BUS 23, where it states that we ensure safeguard of the Antime Wall World Heritage Site during the remainder of the construction. And that takes me on to page 32, where it's the Bean Cross BUS site 03. When it's next door and there's no mention about the Antime Wall. So does Antime Wall only start at the Grand Sable site, or is there work as the wall in that site as well? I just think it needs to be fair. If we're saying we need to watch for the World Heritage Site and Antime Wall in one area, surely the same needs to be in the area next to it.
Mr. Duff, you want to come in on that?
I think the matters relating to the Antime Wall have been dealt with in regard to the handling of the planning applications for both sites. So for the site at Bean Cross and the site at Grand Sable Road, I think it is acknowledging that the site at Grand Sable Road, there are further plans for development that are anticipated, and therefore the narrative relating to safeguarding the Antime Wall relates to any further plans that might come forward there. So it's probably a bit of clarity, but the Bean Cross site has been dealt with, the consent has been granted. At Grand Sable we expect further, and therefore we need to respect the Antime Wall interests. All of that would be dealt with when it comes to the planning application being processed and coming forward, if necessary, to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Duff. I was just wanting to make sure that, because there is still work going on at the Cross site, I just want to make sure that they adhere to the same as the site next door. But thank you very much, Mr. Duff. Page 53, Provost. It's about the winter, about the duty manager. I don't know if it is done already, but can this be forwarded on to elected members at the appropriate time? Because it would be very handy to get that information, Provost. Page 53, point 5, where the duty manager and the ground service manager are nominated, just so we can, as elected members, we know who to call, who to get in touch with. I just think it would be a lot better.
Yeah. Mr. Duff, will you respond to that, please?
Certainly happy to examine further what the communications might need to be around the receipt of weather forecasts. We do, obviously, we're monitoring this continuously, and we do get notification of potential adverse conditions. I think I would want to avoid inundating with members with lots of information on this. As I say, it comes through on a very regular basis. And so perhaps we can speak with our colleagues in governance just about appropriate level of information that might suit members' needs.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Mr.
you.
Duff. I was just meaning about if there's adverse weather, especially for up my area. I didn't want an update every day, Douglas. If there's adverse weather, it'd be nice for the members to get sight of that.
Yeah, I mean, there is a level of that information that we can probably look to distill that would be appropriate for members. It comes with a lot of quite a bit of detail, so we can certainly have a regard to that.
Thank you. And the last one on page, there's 3 pages, but it's all relevant to the one question, Provost. Pages 91, waste for Enva, and Grim's Metal, 92 low mark alloys, and 92 low mark alloys. Are these, Mr. Duff? Because it's all about waste and paper. Do we get receipts for this? It's on page 91. It's the second one, the third one down. Collection and provision of processing sale of non-ferrous cans, £16,000.
Yeah, yes, that will be receipts, Councillor. So we have examined these in the past, and it has been noted that these are payments made by companies to the council for receipt of waste material from us.
Is there a way to highlight that it is receipts, no?
Again, I can take that up with the procurement team to make sure that's advised in future reports.
Thank you, Mr. Duff. And last question, probably for Ms. Cassidy. Page 95, Provost. There's 23 care homes there. Are these all the care homes we have, or how many do it? Is there many providers in Falkirk area?
Mr. Cassidy.
Thank you, Provost. We have a number of council-run care homes and independent providers. Not all of the care home places in Falkirk are used by people in Falkirk. They come from other areas, and there are some people from Falkirk who are placed out with the area. So we currently have 5 care homes that are run by the partnership on behalf of the council, and the rest are independent providers, but it's roughly about 980 beds in total. Hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cassidy. Thanks, Provost.
Okay, thank you. We've got a wee queue waiting here. We have Councillor Coombs first. Councillor Coombs.
Provost, I haven't raised my hand.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Hughes. He's been waving.
Thank you, Provost. My question is in relation to the local development plan action programme schedule, page 10, Antonine Wall. I was just interested because obviously along the line of the Antonine Wall, a number of local authorities seem to have projects. Can I ask in relation to this, are the projects mainly to do with tourism?
Mr. Duff.
Thanks, Provost, and for Councillor Hughes. There are a range of projects that are pursued in partnership with the authorities along the route of the wall and with Historic Environment Scotland. I would highlight in particular what we've done through the European funded LEADER project, whereby we support a range of community-based projects, including an Antonine Wall heritage project. So that has received LEADER funding and is pursuing a number of projects, not all of which are tourism related. Some of them are community based and celebrate the heritage of the wall. So when whilst in large part projects do promote the wall as a tourism asset, through the likes of the Leader funds, we have been able to promote community-based activity, heritage and educational projects that celebrate its benefits for the Central Belt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Binney?
Yes, thank you, Provost. It's on page 20 and it's a Wood End Farm H42. A couple of questions within. Do we have a start date for the development? And also highlighted secure developer contributions that is required. Do we have an amount we're asking for this? Do we have a purpose for this? And was there community consultation regarding this matter?
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Duff again.
Happy to answer that one, Provost. Yes, I mean, the Wood End Farm site is being pursued. It's a council-owned site. It's been pursued by our housing services for delivery of the new council housing scheme at that location. There has been, quite a bit of consultation in the lead up through the development plan and subsequently through the planning application. And in regard to developer contributions, they will go towards a mix of provision of community facilities and open space improvements and contributions to educational facilities in the area. The actual intent of those funds will be subsequent to the definition of needs in that area, and there will need to be further work undertaken around that.
Thank you. Do you have an amount you're looking for? Is that actually been established yet?
That will be established through the supplementary guidance that we have in regard to the level of developer contributions that apply on a per unit basis for developments of that nature. And maybe just to mention the point about start date, I would need to get that for you. I don't have it to hand, and so perhaps we can get that to you after the meeting.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did Councillor Colley intimate she wanted to ask a question?
No, I didn't.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions from the information bulletin, or can we agree? Councillor Reid.
Yes, Provost. I have several on the LDP2, but I think it can all be rolled up into the one question.
Fine.
Page 28 is the former hospital site at Westburn Avenue. Page 31, development at Calderiggs and at Bank Street, Falkirk. Falkirk Stadium on page 33. And Falkirk Bus Station on page 37. They all have something in common, namely nothing is happening. And the timescale for some of them is 2020 to 2030. If you take the hospital site, for example, 20 to 27 is the timescale. I mean, that site has been vacant for, what, 10 years now? Bank Street's been vacant for 10 years. The bus station looks like Beirut on a good day. Is there anything the council can do to accelerate the development of any of these, rather than the scale indicated here?
Mr. Duff.
Happy to respond on that, Provost. Yes, we are impressing on the owners and the various interests of these sites about the need to progress with these proposals. They are contained in our development plan, and it is important to us that we see progress made with them. When it comes to the community hospital site, we have regular meetings with the NHS asset team about the progress of a variety of projects that in the area. And we have impressed on them very recently the need to make progress with the community hospital site. That was a joint meeting we had with Patricia Cassidy from the Health and Social Care Partnership, again asserting the need to make progress because of the care interests that we've expressed around that site as well. Yes, we are very keen to pursue that site and its development in order to keep progress with the plan. There's a couple of sites you mentioned in regard to the town centre. We have the town centre action plan and the partnership in place, and we are pressing to pursue development of these sites. The Bank Street site, we have worked with the prospective developer of that site over some of the planning conditions that were applied at the time of consent to look towards ways we can vary the conditions to help mitigate their concerns over its delivery and ensure it comes forward. We've not yet reached agreement with them as to how that can be secured, and I'll certainly pick up with them from this meeting just to get the latest from the owner of that site as to how they intend to move forward. And in overall terms, in regard to these projects, we have a regular major projects team within Development Services that tracks a variety of the projects that are listed in the action programme here, and therefore we do try to keep all of these moving, liaise with developers and other partners to make sure that progress is being made, because clearly the plan hinges on it. The delivery of land supply for housing, etc., is contingent on it, so it's important that we keep it moving.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Duff. Councillor Reid.
Well, I've heard that answer a few times, shall we say, Provost, particularly about the hospital site. I think it's a failure of community planning, to be honest. And just one final question, which I did refer to Mr. Ritchie. That was the page 92. Page 92, Provost.
Fine.
It's the second last item, provision of scooter housings at various tower blocks within Falkirk. Those are like small porta cabins where the residents can place their scooters. I understand that scooters may be banned from the flats now, and I just wondered as to the repercussions of that.
Okay.
Apparently, some of the scooters or scooter drivers were causing damage to the lifts.
Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you, Provost. As members in that ward know, we've been trying to find a solution to the storage of scooters for some time now, just as part of kind of health and safety arrangements. So we've been building some scooter houses. I think we've built 10 so far, and we're looking to build another 2. I mean, I think that the issue that we've got in the high-rise flats in relation to elderly population is just a microcosm of the issues that we have across all of our housing stock as our tenants age, in terms of just making them fit for purpose in terms of the living accommodation, but the surroundings as well. So as far as the high-rise flats and scooters are concerned, there isn't a problem at the moment. The problem might be somewhere down the line, so we need to work on a solution on that. That just needs to be part of a wider solution and making sure that our accommodation is fit for purpose for our tenants as they grow older. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you.
I agree with Mr. Ritchie on that point. It's part of a wider problem, the ageing population, particularly those in the flats who went up when they were 60 and are now 90, and how we deal with that. Thank you, Mr. Ritchie.
Okay. Any other questions then for the information bulletin?
Provost, page 91. This is for Mr. Duff. River Carn Bridge, New Carn Road, Falkirk Bridge joint replacement works. There was, I think it was last year, the road was closed off for works to be done on that joint of the bridge. Now the road's closed off again. Is that for the same problem?
Mr. Duff.
been in correspondence with Councillor Bissett around this, and I'll need to ask for further detail just to understand the nature of the problem at the bridge, and I'll be happy to go back to Councillor Bissett on that.
Thank you. And page 92, alterations to the former Bothy at Dollar Park. I wonder, is that the building where they used to get the golf clubs and stuff from? And if so, what were the alterations?
Mr. Duff.
Again, I would need to seek these details. I know we have been working with the Friends of Dollar Park over a number of improvements at the site, and I'll need to get details of what's proposed there.
Thank you. And my last one is for Mr. Ritchie. It says Newton X cluster. I don't know what that means. I just wondered if you could maybe explain what that is.
Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you, Provost. It's an IT server.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Reid wants back in. Councillor Reid, further question?
I can help with the Dollar Park issue, Provost.
Fine.
The bothy actually lies behind what was the toilet and faces the entrance to it is from the walled garden. The proposal is to demolish that wall, not the old wall, but the wall of the bothy, and to make it into like a pavilion where you can go if it's raining.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Reid.
Okay, thank you for that information. Right, is there anybody else got a question in relation to the information bulletin, or can we agree? No more questions?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. That takes us to item 4, which is the role and action log, pages 24 to 32. I'll come over to Mr. Moody. Thank you, Mr. Moody.
Yes, thank you, Provost. The rolling action log is there for information only, but there is an opportunity for members to ask questions on any of the items on the log.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moody. Have we got any questions regarding the role and action log, or can we agree? Councillor Nimmo?
Yeah, thanks very much, Provost. Just a question in relation to item 44, that's on page 25 and 26. It's in relation to the equal pay situation. Now, I'm conscious that the last update going with the paperwork here was on the 25th of September 2019. Now, I'm just wondering if we could possibly get a further verbal update as to where we actually are, in particular, how many cases are still outstanding and how much money we've actually paid out so far. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. Mr. Ritchie again. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Provost. We've got somewhere in the region of mid-20s cases which are outstanding, which are at tribunal at the moment. So our numbers are coming down. So mid-20s outstanding. As far as how much we've paid so far on equal pay, I'll write to Councillor Nimmo and other members with that information. I'll just get that double checked with colleagues in HR and finance just for accuracy.
Thanks for that, Stuart.
Okay. Councillor Kerr?
Thank you, Provost. It's on page 29, ID 526, probably for Mr. Duff, regarding the HQ and Arts Centre project with the existing cost envelope of 45 million. Will the sale of the assets that we agreed at the previous meeting and the work that's to be done at Larbour and the stadium, will they be included in this 45 million? Provost, thank you.
Mr. Duff?
Some of those assets that were identified in the report that the executive considered at its last meeting were highlighted as being contained in the business plan that was put forward at the time that the council took its decision in September. So yes, some of those assets, the likes of disposal at Sealock House, and in time the prospects at Ross Vale, etc., were looked to be captured in the business case. I would highlight that the common good assets that were contained in that executive report were not contained in the business case for the headquarters project. The receipts from them would revert to the common good committees for consideration and along the needs of the common good.
Okay.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Mr. Duff.
Any other questions then for the rolling action log, or can we agree?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us now to item 5 on your agenda this morning, which is the Treasury Management Interim Review 2020-21, the referral from the Executive on the 17th of November 2020. It's pages 33 to 47 on your agenda, and Mr. Smale will present the report. Thank you, Mr. Smale.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning. I'm not proposing to go through the report. You'll see the cover report notes that the interim Treasury report was fully considered by the recent meeting of the Executive. The code requires, as a matter of process, for it then to go on to Council for its information. So, Provost, I'll leave it there, and happy to take any particular questions that members may have beyond the consideration that was given at the Executive meeting. Thank you.
Fine. Well, first of all, go to the leader, Councillor Meiklejohn.
Thank you, Provost. I'm not going to say terribly much on this, as there was a very good debate on the Treasury Management review at the Executive. I think it was very timely, considering that the current circumstances we're in and the financial flux and uncertainties that we have, that we were able to do this and bring forward something that will hopefully be able to see us through the next year. But having had significant amounts of money driven through local government, it's been important that we manage that cash flow appropriately, and the internal review is something that is enabled us to do that. I was looking at the potential around some of the changes that may come around the financial flexibilities and preparing us for our financial governance in the future. So I'm happy to move the report as it is, Provost, as there was no division at the Executive, and recommend that we agree.
Thank you. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Provost. In a spirit of keeping this one short, I'll formally second and reserve the right to come back in.
Fine. Thank you, sir. Any questions? Any questions from anybody? Are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, before we go to item 6, it's an opportunity for a comfort break. There's an opportunity here at the moment. I see that 1 or 2 members have been getting up, but this is an opportunity. So 5 minutes for a comfort break for everybody. Thank you very much. Karen, can you hear me? I'm not on mute. Karen?
Yes, Provost, I can hear you.
Yes, we're ready to start again. Thank you. Everybody back on yet? I think we're just waiting on one or two and then we'll get started. Thank you. Is Councillor Alan Nimmo there? Yes. Is that everybody there?
Yep, I'm here, Provost.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Okay, then. We'll reconvene. Thank you very much. This takes us to item 6 on your agenda today. The 6A and 6B. So intended because both reports are linked, it's proposed that there will be a general discussion concerning both of them. First of all, we'll have the Chief Executive will cover the future options report, pages 48 to 66. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning. This report is brought forward as a direct response to the motion agreed by the Council at its meeting on the 30th of September, as set out at paragraph 1.2 of the report. And the provide information on these matters and to invite the Council to decide whether it wishes to maintain the current the trust back in-house or identify which it makes. Course of Section 3 of the report gives some background to setting up the trust and some of council decisions which members will be familiar with. Specifically, in September 2018, an options appraisal report was brought forward to the Council, looking at the 3 options of maintaining the current arrangements with the Trust, allowing greater autonomy, or bringing the Trust back in-house. And at that time, the decision was taken by the Council to maintain the current arrangements. And it was agreed that there was a need to develop a stronger, more effective working partnership. So subsequently to that, in December of that year, the Council agreed a joint vision document and an interim work plan based on a number of core tasks. And the most critical aspect of that was to develop a 5-year savings and investment plan, which was to be linked to the strategic property review. Subsequently, in June, a report was brought forward on that basis. It included a proposed model for improved community leisure provision through schools, investment in core cultural and sporting assets, an increasing community role in the management of assets, and some work for the joint working group to develop the 5-year investment and savings plan. The Council agreed to delay implementation of the proposed recommendations until engagement and consultation had taken place. And following a series of further reports, as detailed, it was determined that this work needed to be taken forward based on the outcomes of the strategic property review. That work has clearly been delayed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, but is now progressing. Turning to section decision of the previous meeting, 3 appendices are attached to the report which set out information requested in terms of the advantages and disadvantages of bringing the trust back in-house. That's Appendix 1. The process, work and indicative timeline that would be involved at Appendix 2, and the risk factors set out at Appendix 3. The main advantage of bringing the trust back in-house is about the fact that decisions could be taken by the Council as a single decision maker in alignment with its agreed priorities. This allows the return of public services to direct democratic accountability. There could be a more integrated and streamlined approach taken to the treatment and use of the facilities in line with the Council's wider property portfolio, its objectives, and the strategic property review. There would be potential savings and efficiencies through an assessment of duplication of posts and work and a review of structural arrangements. A number of disadvantages are also noted in Appendix 1, but really the key disadvantage to the Council of bringing the trust back in-house is the loss of rates savings and the charitable status of the trust, amounting to 1.35 million per year. Now, that would be partially offset by a VAT benefit of approximately £250,000. I think in taking a decision on this matter, the Council requires to carefully balance the advantages and disadvantages in terms of the matter of control, which I've spoken about, against the savings. And as shown in Appendix 1, there are a number of other less significant factors, but factors which nonetheless the Council would wish to take into account. What I would say is, in terms of the advantage given to the Council by having that control, that is only a real advantage. The Council is then prepared to take the types of decisions which will significantly move these services forward in terms of investment, in terms of community input, in terms of rationalisation, and therefore achieving the level of savings which are really required in terms of making a significant contribution to the Council's budget gap. Paragraph 4.6 notes the impact of the pandemic on the Trust. That is specifically and most importantly about loss of income. The Trust has been able to access the UK Government's job retention scheme and receive monies in respect of furloughed employees, which would have not been an option open to the Council if these services had been in-house. The Council will also, in terms of coming to this decision, wish to have regard to matters such as between the Council and the Trust around the proposed new arts centre, and the Trust growth strategy being predicated on significant capital investment and questions around about the affordability of that in the context of our wider financial position. And also the fact that the Trust's services do in large part comprise the Council's largest area of discretionary spend. Appendix 2 sets out the process and indicative timescale that would be involved should a decision be taken to bring the Trust back in-house. Given the complexity of the processes involved, including the need to seek approval from the Scottish Charities Regulator, the engagement and consultation with a number of parties, including employees, trade union representatives, communities and external bodies, it is anticipated that 6 months really is the minimum period that that process would take. In addition, it would be desirable that any alignment would be with the start of a new financial year. So from that perspective, if that decision were taken, a target transfer date would be suggested of the 1st of April 2022. Various risk factors in relation to all of this are set out at Appendix 3. As requested by the Council, consultation has been undertaken with Falkirk Community Trust, and in response to a draft of the report received from the Trust, which is set out at Appendix 4 for members' consideration. So turning to the recommendations, Provost, it's recommended the Council considers and determines whether to maintain the current arrangements or to bring the Trust back in-house with the targeted transfer date of 1st of April 2022, or indeed identifies any other course of action it considers appropriate at this time. And the second recommendation, dependent on the first, is that if the Council decides to bring the Trust back in-house, that you authorise myself, or indeed my nominee, to develop and implement a detailed project plan for bringing the Trust back in-house and prepare and execute all and any resolutions required for that purpose, but also agree to receive further reports in the event that issues arise that would significantly adverse impact on the proposed timescales. Provost, I'm happy to take any questions on the report, and relevant colleagues are also on the call. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrie. It's an opportunity at the moment, as we stated at the beginning, that there's two integral reports. So we're going to 6B, which is the Falkirk Community Trust Business Plan, and we'll bring forward Mr. Smale. It's pages 67 to 123. Mr. Smale, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Provost. So this report's consistent with the formal funding agreement between and the Council, whereby the Trust submits its proposed business plan to the Council at this point in the financial year. The idea is that it allows the Council to provide feedback to the Trust with the objective of gravitating to an agreed position by the time the Council has its budget meeting into the new calendar year. The range of documents forming the business plan are listed at para 3.2 and indeed are appended. COVID, as was touched on in the previous report, has clearly had a significant financial impact on the operation of the Trust, with deficits forecast for both this year and for the next financial year. I think the point to highlight with the submission from the Trust this year, where it's significant and different from previous years, is that the Trust submission is predicated on a statement that they have identified savings options to the value of £4.5 million, but rather than putting them forward explicitly at this point, the Trust wishes to have discussions with the Council before revealing them. And this reflects the operational significant potentially these options would have. And the proposal is that these discussions with the Council would determine the criteria that would be applied in assessing those savings options. So flowing from this, the report suggests that the Council does indeed agree to the Trust's proposition, and that group leaders supported by appropriate officers, Council officers, are the Council's representatives in such engagement. The report in para 4.2 updates the specific position with respect to the Grangemouth Golf Club, which has been a running issue for a year or two now. And para 4.4 deals with the Trust proposals for investment of their small, it must be said, rolling capital programme. It is worth noting that there are more strategic capital bids, which were alluded to in the previous report, that will be considered as part of the wider deliberations on the capital programme. So we jump back to the recommendation at 2.1, which essentially picks up on the for this dialogue to take place with the Trust, with the position being reported back to the January meeting of Council. self-evidently, that's a very compressed period within which this dialogue would take place. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Mr. Smale. We'll go to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Meikle-John. Thank you.
You, Provost, and I think it's been helpful to hear from both Mr. Smale and Mr. Laurie before actually making any comment on these two reports, because they are quite intrinsically linked, and it's been helpful to hear both reports before responding. I don't actually think that we are in a position to be able to take a view on the future options at this time without the further discussions with the Trust on their business plan. This year has thrown up huge challenges, and indeed there will be much more still to come, and as it will take much longer for the business of the Trust to actually start to recover. And I think that needs to be taken into account in whatever decisions we make, and indeed there may well be to restructure some of the business of the Trust in relation to the longer term impacts of the pandemic. This presents Falkirk Community Trust with a significant challenge as a result of the pandemic. This has so much of a negative impact on the Trust's business, and it's not stopped and continues to be an impact, particularly seasonally, not just being possible this year, but in developing a sustainable recovery plan with the potential losses of up to 50% of their generated income. It gives a gap of between 4 to 5 million that the Trust have to find. The Trust in their submission have not provided details of the plans and how we would look to meet that budget gap, but we requested discussions with the Council and how they collectively to take that level of funding out of Falkirk Community Trust without significantly impacting on services. Similarly, we need to have an understanding of what that impact could have on the Council's budget, as well as what that might mean for our communities. Therefore, I think it's important that we do meet with the Trust to discuss how that budget gap can be met with the outcome to be reported back to Council in January. It will also allow a bit more time to see if we have a bit more clarity around the Scottish Government and Council budget, including the possible use of fiscal flexibilities and any potential further funding for loss of income that may come to mitigate the impact, particularly on the Trust and all of the aspects in which the service it delivers. It will allow further work to be carried out also in relation to the strategic property review, and that's something that has held back being able to make decisions over the last few years. And while that is progressing, and that will actually come to fruition eventually, but it probably will be in a phased way, and that may enable some year savings that will also contribute. In relation to the future options, I don't feel that we're in a position to take a view on the way forward without having that engagement. And would suggest again that the report also be deferred for a decision in coming to the January meeting. I'm therefore proposing to move two motions, and in an effort to try and keep it simple, I'll take it in the same order in which they appear on the papers. In relation to the Falkirk Community Trust options paper, I would move the following. Notes that due to the current financial uncertainties, it's not been possible for the Trust to bring a detailed financial business plan at this stage. It notes the recommendation in relation to the business plan is to respond positively to the Falkirk Community Trust request for further discussions with the Council on how the projected budget gaps best managed, and the administration is supportive of that proposal. And we would agree that it would not be appropriate to take a view on the future options of the Trust until the discussions have taken place, and accordingly defers the decision item until 20th of January. In response to the business plan, I would move that Council acknowledges that this year has been unprecedented and that the impacts of the global pandemic has significantly hit leisure, culture and the entertainment sector significantly. The full and long-term impact is yet to be realised. The recovery is likely to take a long time. It recognises that there is a 4 to 5 million gap predicted for Falkirk Community Trust for 21-22 in the business plan, which will be a significant challenge to meet for the Falkirk Community Trust, while also recognising that if the gap is not met by savings from Falkirk Community Trust, it will also add to the existing pressures on the Council's budget. Therefore, agree to the recommendation that group leaders meet with the representatives of Falkirk Community Trust to have discussions on how that budget gap can be managed, with the proposals to be brought back to Council for consideration on the 20th of January. I see that as a pragmatic way forward, allowing the discussions and the shape of how the gap will be met, and taking into account the impact on the Trust, but also the impact on the Council. And that would be able to be reported back to members for further consideration at the January meeting, and at that time we may be in a better position to take a more formal view in relation to the options, the future options paper for the Trust. So I'm therefore happy to leave it at that, Provost, and obviously happy to round up following the debate.
Have you got a seconder? Have we got a seconder for that? Councillor Meikle John, have you got a seconder there?
It should have been Councillor Garner. I don't know whether he's got technical difficulties.
Fine.
But I'm
Can
sure
you
one
give
of
us-
my colleagues would be more than happy to formally second.
Happy to formally second and reserve
That's
the right.
fine. Okay. Now, to try and ensure that everybody realises what your motions are, we're going to ask that they're put up on the screen. That gives everybody an opportunity to look at them for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and then we'll ask if any of the two groups, the Labour or the Conservatives, want either to have a recess and they get put into a lobby, or if anyone wants to come forward with an amendment. So it's to give everybody an opportunity. So what we're going to do is, the technology's here. Mr. Perry is going to put up, and you've got 5 minutes to have a look at, and then we'll come back. Thank you. Members, that's the first options paper, first part of the motion. Have you had an opportunity to look at it? Can we put the second part on? Everybody happy with that? Okay, Brian.
Provost, I had problems reading the motion.
Okay. Well, I think that Mr. Perry is going to email everybody the first part, and then you can have a closer look. But he's going to put the second part of the motion on the screen now. Okay. And he'll send that to you as well. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwood, there's a magnifying glass should appear on the left-hand side of your screen, just beside the document Mr. Perry shared. There's 5 icons. The third one down is a magnifying glass with a plus in it. If you click on that, it should enlarge the document on your screen.
Got it. Thanks.
I'm going to come to the two leaders of the opposition, Councillor Bissett and Councillor Kerr, and ask them if they would like to take their members into a lobby to discuss it before we open up for debate. Councillor Bissett, how do you feel about this?
Thanks, Convener. The leader of the council took a sight of these motions yesterday, so we discussed them this morning already, so we've no need for a recess at this point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr?
We're the same, Provost. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I maybe ask you at this particular stage, Councillor Bissett first, have you any amendment to the motion?
Yes, Provost, we have an amendment. Councillor Coombs will be speaking to that.
That's fine, thank you. And I'll go to Councillor Kerr. Have you got a further amendment?
Not at the moment, Provost,
okay,
but we'll wait to see what the amendment is from.
Okay, fine, thank you. Councillor Coombs, would you like to come forward with your amendment, please? Thank you. Councillor Coombs, can you hear me?
I can, Provost, sorry.
Thank you. Will you come forward with your amendment, please?
I'm trying to do this paperless, so if you just bear with me 2 seconds.
Oh, we've plenty of time.
Video doesn't want to start. Okay. Right, I'll just talk. I can't get. Oh, there you go. I'm a bit delayed. Right, thanks, Provost, and thanks for your indulgence there. Provost, I said at the last council meeting that the proposal to bring the trust back in was mad, bad, and irresponsible. It was mad, bad, and irresponsible in September, and it's the same today. And it will be no less mad, bad, or irresponsible in January. This bonkers idea needs to be stopped now. Here and now, stop it in its tracks. It's mad because, as we've already heard, it will cost at least an extra £1 million a year, every year. In reality, it will cost the council much more than £1 million because, as a trust, it's also been able to bring in £5 million of external funding that would simply not be available to an in-house organisation. Plus, all the inevitable transition costs that the officers don't even dare to estimate in the papers. No organisation is perfect. I said it in September and I'll repeat it again. And we must admit, if the trust isn't perfect, neither is the council. The trust, although, has done everything that it's been asked of it. Prior to COVID, the trust had reduced costs, it had increased revenue and participation. By any objective measure, it has been a success. How would an in-house organisation better serve the needs of our communities? I don't understand why the Tory and SNP councillors that voted for this think that replacing a representative board of directors with Councillor Spears could possibly be a good thing. Indeed, the people of Bo'ness might well remember the last time when it was a council department and Councillor Reid was the portfolio holder that they tried to close Kinneil Museum. It's bad because the Falkirk Council area is blessed with a range of facilities that are accessible to each one of the communities that we serve. Officers may see the only solution to the imposed austerity to be an SPR that replaces these valued facilities with maybe a porta cabin in each of the high schools, but that's not what our constituents want. To be fair, Deputy Provost Ritchie and Councillor Gardner realised this, which is why they have previously torpedoed the officers' plans. It's this council, not the trust, that has had to play grandmother's footsteps with our communities. Consulting about vague directions of travel and concepts of community hubs with no details or costs, rather than being honest with the people out there about the implications. Make no mistake, a vote today to bring the trust in-house is a vote to close Bo'ness Recreation Centre, Denny Leisure Centre and centralise the libraries. We'll only have 2 leisure centres if we're lucky, Camelin and Grangemouth probably, and Grangemouth and Bo'ness town halls will be gone. You cannot make these savings without making cuts. And this isn't speculation, it's the inevitable consequence of a turbocharged strategic property review, because the financial implications of turning a charity into a council department. It's irresponsible because even if you thought closing valued community facilities was a good thing, nothing will be able to happen until 2022 at the earliest, as we've just heard from the Chief Executive. It would be a terrible distraction, just as all our energies are going to be needed to recover from COVID. As the officer's report suggests, Audit Scotland would also want to know what on earth we were playing at, choosing to increase expenditure to reverse a decision that has saved already over £9 million from the public purse, and it's improved. So, and what problem is this move intended to solve? The problem that the Trust has is exactly the same one as the Council has, the chronic underfunding of local government by the SNP, leading to hopelessly unrealistic budgets set with disproportionate savings located on the closures of facilities that even SNP councillors cannot accept. Bringing the trust in-house does not change that reality. It will just make the choices harder and starker. The portfolio holder will have to find 1 million savings each year just to tread water. Well, that's if there's any swimming pools left. The administration's medium-term financial plan assumes that 4 million savings on the current council grant of 10 million. There are no meaningful democratic choices in that kind of maths, unless you think that squabbling within the SNP and Tory groups over which community is going to be thrown under the SPR bus is the meaning of democratic accountability. The only reason for voting to bring the trust in-house is if you want to close even more community facilities faster. As the council leader says, this is about budgets, and absolutely there needs to be proper consultation between the council and the trust about these budgets. But the budget gap won't decrease by bringing it in-house. We've already heard this, it's written in the report. There is no doubt that £1 million worth of reasons why we should not be doing this. The Labour group stands against these unnecessary cuts. It stands against the do-it-yourself council with all the facilities centralised into Falkirk. I would really like to know, though, what it is that the SNP and the Tory group stand for in proposing that we bring them in-house. Thank you, Provost. The motion is extremely simple. It says that the council agrees to maintain the current arrangement with the trust in order to continue to save £1.2 million per annum, and therefore avoiding even more facility closures. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you for that. Have you got a seconder for your amendment?
Yes, Provost, I'll second the amendment and reserve the right to come back in.
Okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to try and get the amendment up on the screen now. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. Now, as we said at the beginning, this is a two-part item. The first is the future options, and the amendment was against the motion for the future options. So what we'll do at the moment is we're going to open it up to members who want to ask any questions in relation to the report by the Chief Executive on the future options. So if there are any questions in relation to that one, try and keep this simple. Any questions to Mr. Lawrie? Councillor Munro, then Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Provost. In the report on item 3.8, it points out that as a council in January, because last year the trust had not made its required savings then, we asked the trust to look again at making savings and to work with the Council of the Future in order to actually look at more innovative ways of making savings. Has this actually happened? I mean, the meeting in question was January last year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lorry, want to come back on?
Yes, thank you, Provost. I mean, the report makes the point that a lot of this work has been much delayed by the fact of the pandemic. So the SPR was the critical kind of touch point for the work that the Trust needs to look at, because clearly, whatever the route to savings are, this balance between investment in new facilities and savings on older, more expensive and less well-used facilities is at the heart of it. But that has been delayed. So the SPR is now up and running. We're entering the consultation phase following the report that was agreed by the executive a couple of months ago. But the work inevitably has been delayed. So in progress, but not as far advanced as I think any of us would have wished.
Anybody get other questions for Mr. Lorry? Councillor Alexander? You need to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask, the figure was of 1.2 million a year saving was quoted by Councillor Coombs. Can I ask for the officers, the finance officers' views of that particular figure?
Mr. Smale?
Thank you, Provost. Figures in the equation here. One is the gross expected loss of the non-domestic rate income, which is by far the largest element, over $1 million. There is a offsetting VAT element because under the current VAT regime, there is a leakage of VAT recovery with respect to the Trust operation, which would be remedied were the Trust to be within the rules applying to the Council. So the offset of those two figures gives you a net robust figure of circa 1 million as being the net impact of such a decision. Thank you, Provost.
Yeah. Provost, is there any follow-up?
Carry on.
Can I ask the officers of Falkirk Council that have responsibility for leisure provision or for working with the board, can I ask if it's the policy of the board to invest in facilities that are considered to be have the potential to deliver a profit? And this is the central policy of the board. In which case, can you tell me where Bowness Community Complex is? Because my understanding is that it's not figuring within the Trust vision for investment.
Mr. Lorry, do you want to come in on this one?
Thank you, Provost. I mean, you may recall that when we brought the report forward in June of 2019, that actually investment in Bowness in terms of creating a new facility, bringing together the school and adding sports and leisure facilities onto that was part of the proposal that emerged at that stage. I think also if you look at investment that's taken place over recent times, for example, in the Mariner, there has been an attempt to invest in projects which will bring forward additional income to the Trust. But I wonder, Provost, if in terms of the board's policy, as Councillor Alexander asked, if it's more appropriate to ask Maureen Campbell to comment on that?
Fine. Is she with us?
Yes, Provost, I'm here.
Fine. Would you like to come in on that one? Thank you.
Yes, I'll leave my camera switched off, Provost, because sometimes the connection is not so good. In terms of the board's policy, it's to invest right across the portfolio, and we have been investing in a number of projects, and Brian Smale referenced the capital programme of £508,000 that the Trust receives from the Council capital programme each year for essential maintenance works to be done. And if you look at that list, then you see that there are essential repairs works that are largely being carried out across the piece. Whenever the board's looking at investment propositions, then it has to look at the condition of the asset, the likelihood of that condition being able to sustain the level of investment that is being contemplated. And that often requires us to have a discussion with the council about the wider condition of the asset across the piece. I think we have invested in Bowness Recreation Centre during the time that the Trust has been in the management of it, as we have invested in a number of other locations, although, as the Chief Executive points out, our most recent significant investment in the Mariner Centre has been about trying to get that building to become much more financially sustainable, as we're trying to do with all of our buildings, including the Recreation Centre, where the subsidy over the last 5 years has dropped dramatically, almost by 50%, in terms of the investment that's been made there to make sure that that meets customer needs in the local area. Thank you.
So, Provost, does that mean that, for example, that the biggest threat to the existence of the Bowness Recreation Centre lies with the Trust rather than with the local authority, who are looking at this whole issue in relation to the strategic property review?
Try and get you an answer to that one. Think we'll ask Ms Campbell to come back on that.
I don't think the future of the Recreation Centre does lie with the Trust. The Council owns all of the assets, and the Council makes all the decisions about what the future of the assets is to be. And I think, as the Chief Executive highlighted earlier, the importance of the strategic property review lies at the heart of any future asset management decisions that are made. So it's not a matter for the Trust to determine which facilities will be there in the future. It's very much a part of the SPR, of which the Council and the Trust are working together to look at how culture and sport provision can be provided in the future. But the decisions about which facilities would be invested in at the scale of investment that would be required in the likes of Bowness Recreation Centre would be a matter for the Council to decide upon. The Council Chief Executive might want to comment too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Blackwood.
Thanks, Provost. Provost, Mr Smale talked there about VAT and the rates, but he never mentioned, and I know it's not guaranteed, the potential loss of external funding. We just seem to talk about £1 million, but as far as I'm concerned, it's more than £1 million. If Mr Smale wants to comment on that.
Okay, Mr Smale, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Provost. Clearly, that's one of the elements in the mix. A figure was mentioned, I think, by Councillor Coombs in terms of a sum. I take that to be a sum over the 10-year life of the trust. But it certainly is true, having a separate entity as a charity allows you to access, or at least apply for funding streams that would not be open to the council as such. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn, then Councillor McLuckie and Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Provost. Can I first of all say that I'm quite delighted, actually. I thought the pantomime had been cancelled this year, and I'm pleased to say that Councillor Coombs and the Labour group have reassured us that it hasn't, so well done. But listen, more seriously, my question really is addressed to Kenneth Laurie and Brian Smale. First of all, if you look at the Bartlett review that everybody knows about, it clearly states in it on the recommendations that with Alios, the issue is quite simple, as this was an artificial arrangement set up as everybody said, to save money on rates. And it says in the initial review at 4.116 that this is really tax avoidance and should cease. You know, it also says that as a result of ALIOs, there's an unfair balance between public and private businesses, that gyms, cafeterias, leisure facilities, because private ones have to pay rates, that the council ones, any council ones, have an unfair advantage. And clearly this is wrong, because surely as a council, we are hoping to promote shops, businesses, etc. The other point, I'll combine it all together because it's all relevant, but my first question really is, surely, although it's not illegal, Falkirk Council is not condoning tax avoidance. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. We should be portraying this picture to all the people out there, the constituents, all the members of all these businesses, etc. The other thing is that, and this is for Brian Smale, is that once the SPR takes place, unless I'm wrong, any community trust properties that are closed and sold off, demolished, or transferred to the community will no longer benefit us in terms of rates. So the rates bill will actually diminish. Similarly, unless I'm wrong, when a new arts centre is built, I would assume that the old town hall would demolish well before it, because you're not going to build one and still have the old one there. And when it's demolished, will it attract a rates bill? No, it won't. So the council will make a saving, because the new civic or arts centre will attract a far, far higher rates bill than the old town hall, and the council will have to pick up the bill for that. So when you add all that all together, this myth about saving money through rates relief, which is really, according to the Barker review, not my review, is tax avoidance and should be avoided. It's an abuse of the system, said, because it creates an unlevel playing field. It's a myth. It's a bit like the pantomime the Labour Party have decided to commit. So really it's two parts: an opinion on the tax avoidance issue and an opinion on the reduction of the rates bill, which will happen naturally anyway through the various reasons I've mentioned. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Mr. Smale. You want to come in here?
Thank you, Provost. Obviously, there's several points there. The matter of avoidance, I guess it's a use of language there, and Councillor Flynn has quoted from Barclay, and that's a word they use. I guess from my perspective, we, in common with virtually every other council in Scotland, and indeed you could extend that wider in the UK, under the rules that prevail, have opted to configure our culture, leisure and sports services in this way and derive a benefit that ultimately flows through to the council taxpayers. That bill would otherwise be higher. So I'm comfortable, notwithstanding the observations Councillor Flynn has made, I'm comfortable that we are on solid, safe ground with our position here. And as I say, we by no means are alone on this. Tax treatment between public and private sectors is an issue. I mean, I touched on VAT earlier. There is a review going through the courts at the moment on possible change in VAT treatment that has as one of the underpinning arguments different treatment between the public and private sector. So it's an issue that doesn't just restrict itself to the matter of rates. It's a more pervasive question, and I can't really go much further in terms of the rights and wrongs of that. It is what it is. In terms of the rates impact, a couple of strands there. One is to the extent that facilities were closed, then clearly once that process is complete, and if it is demolition is complete, then the rates liability falls. In terms of our general portfolio, they will, along with all other subjects, be subject to the next rates evaluation, or valuation rather than evaluation, the next rates evaluation, which I think has been put back to 22. So all the rateable subjects then, including, though the Arts Centre won't be ready at that point, all the subjects would be subject to that rateable valuation review, and indeed to any mitigating allowances that may prevail at that time. I hope that at least to some extent addresses the questions and points raised by Councillor Flynn. Thank you, Provost.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCluskey?
Right, thanks, Provost. I'll be supporting, obviously, Councillor Coombs' motion. It's a good motion, quite clearly the benefits of keeping and protecting services. I didn't believe that the Conservatives had took a decision whether to bring it in-house. It was only a proposal for discussion, but and listening to Councillor Flynn, who have maybe upset him and put him down that road. But there is a few issues here. We've already mentioned, obviously, who's responsible for closing facilities. We've seen it at Hall Glen Sports Centre. The Trust didn't want to close Hall Glen Sports Centre. It was a building with a heating system, £250,000. It didn't make economic sense keeping it open. It's a council building. The council hadn't maintained them, and that's the issue why Hall Glen shut. I took on board and said previously the decision to support the Trust in principle to start with, because it was going to protect services like Muir Avonside Park. And the reality is now, if we're asking them to meet the shortfall of 4 and 5 million, then that would be up in the air, and I'll not be supporting anything that looks to lose services in my area, and that's why, as I says, I'll be protecting the Labour motion. In relation to obviously the SNP motion, it mentions that we're on unprecedented times, and our Nick says the same thing on obviously in Parliament meetings, unprecedented times. But we heard obviously earlier on that from our chief exec that the only funding assistance that the Trust has had is through Westminster coming from the furlough scheme, right? We've obviously extra money was given to Scotland, but what do we see? The 4 million no being any assistance for the Scottish Government into the shortfall of the sports and leisure, and that's why the Trust's in that issue, because they've been treated the same as the council and ignored into the funding. We've had 14 years of cuts because obviously the government in there doesn't fully support councils, and now they're obviously doing the same with the Trust. And as I say, it's a huge thing. It will close half the premises if we're asking them to match that, and certainly the Scottish Government is to me is just allowing that to happen. The fact that haven't stepped in and tried to go there and assist, and once again we're going to have to add it on our budget cuts, and that means whether if we support the Trust and we support our facilities and try to keep them open, it means we'll have further cuts in education and roads and other services added to the 20 million that we've already got to cut this year for a council that's not supposed to be getting subsidised from Holyrood. So as I say, that's my perspective. I'll be supporting the Labour motion, and it does make sense. I have been frustrated with times with the Trust and getting responses. I found I addressed that. I didn't email them anymore, so I wasn't getting the delay in responses. If you contact Maureen, you get an answer. But as I says, other officers was leaving me frustrated, but no further frustrated than if you try to contact Scottish Water or Scottish Power or Scottish National Heritage. You talk to people out in India and that, and about a local issue, and you never get any answers to the question, and you give up after a number of hours. So as I say, the trust's a separate organisation, and I may get frustrated with it at times, but clearly we're here to look at the financial benefits of it, the benefits it to our communities, and without a doubt, between the rates benefit and the increase in funding that they get, that we wouldn't be getting as a council if we took it in-house, is more benefit to my communities, will help the quality of life by keeping the trust as it is, although dialogue will need to be kept on about improving this, the liaison between the two organisations. Thank you.
Councillor Garner. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Provis. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, sorry. Apologies for dropping out earlier when I was meant to be seconding the motion from the council leader. Obviously, I'm fully in support of that motion. This is more in relation to Councillor Coombs, and it's more or less a 19.1, I guess. It's clarification. As stated, if the trust want to close facilities, they manage, in my opinion, they will need to give Ward 3, which is Derry and Banknock, soon to be the largest ward in Falkirk district, fit for purpose, state-of-the-art facilities, which currently we don't have in our area. That was when I mentioned that, and that's, I think, how Councillor Coombs brought my name up in her preamble. So, only then, and then would agree to the closures that are probably proposed by the trust. And let's not forget something here, and I'm quite bemused by the Labour's approach here. It was them, this group, that refused and rejected a large £50 million investment in the trust and the trust facilities. Now, that wasn't years ago. That was only a matter of a couple of months ago. They all stood there and rejected a £50 million investment. And now they're coming round and speaking as if the trust is the be-all and end-all. And supporting the motion, obviously, this is to look at it, see what the trust can come up with, and then we can take it from there. And I think that is the sensible approach. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Black.
Thanks, Provost. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Thanks. Provost, when we were in power, we established the trust, and the main reason being was to save money. And I think so far it's probably saved around about 9 million, and it's brought a lot of money in that a council couldn't. And I think that I would rather go with what Audit Scotland says and listen to what Audit Scotland says about Alios in general, etc., rather than take Councillor Flynn's spinning things. We can argue all day about the pros and cons of having our leisure and cultural services either in-house or at arm's length. However, the fundamental facts are that setting up the trust has saved millions of pounds in protected services. As a council with statutory duties that we have to deliver, so when making savings, it's usually the things that people value but are not necessary that are put forward to make savings. Currently, we have the strategic property review. Now, this has been on the go for a long time because none of us, not one single councillor, wants to make any of those cuts. None of us want to close facilities that are valued in our communities. Bowness Recreation Centre and Grangemouth Town Hall in particular are two that come to my mind. So we need to listen to what these communities are saying, because they don't necessarily want a school super hub at the expense of closing their leisure centre.
I'd take it.
Bowness Recreation Centre needs a new boiler. Grangemouth Sports Complex and the Marner Centre have both had new boilers, and they're all of a similar age. Bowness residents are quite vocal that they want to keep their leisure centre. Grangemouth Town Hall is highly valued for its heritage value in our town and for the shows that it puts on and that performed with the community. So how will bringing the trust in-house help save the recreation centre or any of the other buildings that our citizens value? And the reality is that we're going to be over 1 million down before we even begin to think about the shortfall in income that the trust has had to suffer in the last 8 months due to the pandemic, the extra expense of opening up a sports complex at that time. The reality is the chronic underfunding of councils by an SNP government. That's the reality. That's why we're here where we are today. Putting the trust back in-house is a daft idea that will cost our communities dearly, and I strongly advise against this, and that's why I'll be voting for the amendment. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, Provost. Before I go into my main points, can I just say that I'm not going to be taking any advice for the Tory party regarding tax avoidance. I'm quite happy and I support the view that Brian Smale has provided, and I value his opinion very highly. Just moving on, we're not talking about savings, we're talking about cuts to jobs and services. Now, the Labour Party here in Falkirk will do what it can to help protect jobs and services at every opportunity, especially in the lead up to Christmas and in future years. I obviously support the amendment, Provost. It's a common sense approach as far as I'm concerned, instead of what Councillor Coombs has said, a mad, bad and irresponsible approach by the SNP. The crux of the matter boils down to money, and I agree, or more importantly, the lack of money due to the continual heavy-handed SNP Scottish Government and the cuts that they continually pass down to local government. This council has suffered over the last 13 years to the detriment of the people that we're supposed to represent. I'm just wondering how long it's going to take the SNP to blame Westminster, because that seems to be their normal route to their get out. The SNP nationally continually fail and protect council services. These are the services and facilities that the public here in Falkirk value very highly, and they won't take kindly to any further cuts. The SNP administration might even try and blame the previous Labour-led administration for the cuts, but it has to be borne in mind these cuts came from their government in Edinburgh. Even harsher cuts than was passed on by Westminster, so I'd like to see what their argument again is regarding that and see if they've changed their position. Thanks, Provost.
Councillor Meikle-John, you'd like to wind up, please? Councillor Meikle-John.
Sorry, Provost, I had my hand up a few times.
Did you? Councillor Bowes.
There's also a number of other people I see with hands up, Provost, including Councillor Kerr.
Well, they must have just put them up then. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Provost. I'm really disappointed that party politicking has come into this. I think this is far too important a subject for that. One for Mr. Moody. I've actually got two, but one for Mr. Moody, first of all. Mr. Moody, at any point does the motion by the SNP group say that we're going to bring the trust back in today? I didn't pick that up in our motion that's what we were saying, although the amendment seems to be suggesting that we did, and a lot of the comments seem to say we have.
Mr. Moody.
Yes, Provost, the motion by Councillor Meikle-John has been displayed, so I think its terms are clear to the members of the council, and the operative part of the motion is to continue the decision on the recommendations on this report to the January meeting of council. So it's not to take a decision on the matter at this stage.
Thank you. I wanted that clarified, because I think anybody watching this might be thinking that we're suggesting, as the SNP administration, to make a decision to bring the trust back in house today, which is pretty obvious from the motion that we're not. Can I just reiterate something, and it may be something that the Chief Executive can cover on the item of the capital expenditure. £50 million to be spent on sports and leisure facilities was what we proposed, and people are telling us that we don't want to invest in it, or should I say a certain party are saying we don't want to invest in it. That can be in no way seen as an administration that didn't want to invest in the trust and trust facilities. Can the Chief Executive, I think it was in the report, can he tell us what difference that £50 million investment would have made to the trust?
Mr. Lorry?
Yes, thank you, Provost. I mean, the references to the report in June of 2019, which brought forward views both in terms of the future model of provision. So that was about a model based specifically around improved provision within a number of secondary schools, investments in some other assets, and also some rationalisation that went alongside that. Now, that report was intended as a stepping stone towards a 5-year investment and savings plan, which would align with the SPR. So all of the detail wasn't in that report. But I suppose what it ties into is the broader issue about what the SPR can be about if the investment is there. And clearly, as set out in my report today, there's serious questions which the Council will need to consider about how it deploys its capital assets, because there are significant pressures in terms of capital as well. But the proposal behind the SPR is that actually investment in new, fit-for-purpose, modern, efficient, low-carbon facilities can take a lot of cost out of the system, whilst also improving the facilities that are available for members of the public. And we've seen this model taken forward. It's a fairly standard approach which has been taken forward by councils across Scotland. I mean, the point has been made about that the SPR has to be done in consultation with communities, and that's absolutely right, because actually different communities will take a different view in terms of what provision they would like to see in their own areas. My own experience, Provost, is that when councils come forward with excellent new facilities, and that the cost of that includes the rationalisation of existing facilities, you can get a range of strong reactions, but these can often be very successful facilities in terms of both improving leisure and cultural facilities, and also in terms of taking cost out of the system, and can also be very popular with the communities they serve. But it's not an easy thing to do. It has to be done in consultation with communities. That's absolutely right. And there is a significant capital sum which the council would need to put towards that. So all of these are relevant factors, and apologies if that's a rather lengthier answer than Councillor Bowes was looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Lorry. Unfortunately, though, if I remember correctly, though, that investment that the administration put forward, I think, did not go through, if I remember correctly.
Provost, the council agreed that it should that decision should not be taken pending further consultation, and then subsequent reports led to the position that we're in, whereby the 5-year savings and investment plan for the trust will be taken forward on the back of the results of the SPR consultation and implementation plan.
Okay, Councillor Bowes. Thank you. Councillor Kerr was up next. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Provost. The Tory group will be supporting the reason that we think it's only right that the communication with the 3 group leaders, the Chief Executive and the Trust, has an important part to play before any decision has been made, Provost. And many speakers previously have talked, whether it's cuts, whether it's in-house or the Trust itself, cuts will need to be made, and it's elected members who will need to make them. So whether the trust stays as it is, we as local elected members will need to make those cuts. And whether, Provost, whether the trust has control of the properties, or if it's the council. Whatever organisation takes this forward, it needs to be accountable to the public purse. This is public money. I would just like to finally, Provost, when I mention accountability, when was the last time the trust was at scrutiny?
Who could answer that? Maybe get an answer for you on that one. Hold on. Councillor Alexander, you'll be coming in next. Thank you.
Provost, I might be able to assist.
Fine. Thank you, Campbell. Thank you.
The Trust has been at each of the scrutiny committees that the Council's asked us to attend, and we're due at the scrutiny panel next week. So each time the Council asks for information to be provided through the scrutiny process, that's done as per the schedule.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks, Ms Campbell.
Okay, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Alexander, and I think Councillor Aitchison had his hand up as well. So Councillor Alexander first. Thank you, sir. You need to unmute. Thank you.
Apologies for that, Provost.
No problem.
It's been said that the consultation with the community is going to be the key to it, and that's correct. Consultation with the community is the key to unlocking doors for funding and to unlocking doors for genuine examples of entrepreneurism in relation to the authorities. But can I say that it was only recently, very recently, that the trust stopped meeting behind closed doors. They still won't publish the minutes of the meetings. Now, these are local authority owned properties, so therefore publicly owned properties that the trust has a responsibility for maintaining on behalf of the council, and yet there is very little by way of consultation from the trust, either with the council or with the general public, and that's crucial. In relation to funding, and no consideration has been given in the amendment to the improved facilities and the impact that would have on expenses, on the general time of how much easier it is to maintain the new build than it is to try to keep together the facility that has passed its best, to say the least. So, you know, that's something to do with the debate today. I'd hoped that we would get a debate on the ability of ourselves as local authority to properly scrutinise and properly manage that scrutiny process over the period of time that it takes between scrutiny, official scrutiny, because scrutiny is not just a case of a report that goes to a committee and then is passed aside and sits on someone's desk. So the next time it's reproduced and becomes part of an official council agenda, because it's got to. We need something better than that. Yes, additional funding would be terrific, and I notice Alan never mentioned Westminster except for to defend them. You know, it was both the main Westminster parties that stopped the Scottish Government from being able to borrow. You know, that's something that is a basic requirement of any administrative body, the ability to borrow. And, you know, we have it here. We've got more power than the Scottish Government. in terms of that aspect of it. So there's very much something that in there for all. These are issues that we as an authority will look at over the next period of time until this is brought back, and do so. And that's the correct way to do it, because we have that responsibility, and it's a responsibility that I'm afraid wasn't taken when it should have been. And you know, I hate to be the one that says I told you so, but we told you so.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Aitchison.
Thanks, Provost. Can I just ask a couple of questions? Can I ask?
Certainly.
Ask for clarification on what the SNP think will change between now and January, please. And also just to ask whether the £50 million investment that was proposed last year, was that basically just a for schools, for development in schools, because that's all it seemed to be leisure facilities were being done, so they could be putting in mega hubs in schools. Just also, I mean, there are 5 members on the community trust, 5 councillors on the community trust. Surely the party's views should be taken forward to there, and if they are, you know, where are they going? But basically, this comes down to budget cuts from the Scottish Government, and that's why the trust are in such a bad state. Thank you.
So we get somebody to answer that. I believe that your first question maybe could be answered by the leader when she's winding up.
Happy to do that, Provost. Could you remind me of what your first point was again, David? Sorry, I wasn't writing notes.
You weren't listening beyond that. No, I'd just like to ask for clarification what the SNP group and motion would think would change between now and January.
Okay. And your second question again, Mr. Aitchison.
Basically, the 50 million upgrade that was proposed last year, was that basically just for schools to enhance their super hubs that were going to be mega in the community, which basically I don't think there's a great appetite within communities from what I can hear.
Okay, thank you, David. We'll get an answer there. Mr. Lawrie, you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I mean, there were a number of proposals in that June 2019 report, and detailed costings were not included, but certainly one of the assets which was highlighted as a focus for investment was the Grangemouth Sports Complex. So whilst schools were a key element of that, and Bowness was identified in that category, the Grangemouth Sports Complex was an example of an investment which would not have been school-based.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Binney wanted in.
Thanks, Provost. I've really got a question, but firstly, I want to say you'll all be aware the first vaccine has been approved by the regulator, so I think there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel next year. But what I do want to say is I'm going to support our motion. I think that's very important. There's further discussion done with regards to this, because as you can imagine, this is one of the biggest decisions we'll ever have to make. But one of my questions within that was with regard to the trust. You'll all be aware the following organisation is about a partnership with other bodies supported the work of the trust during 2019-20, either through grant award, sponsorship, or providing in-kind support. In a hypothetical situation, if it did come back in-house, you think all the partnerships we've got and all the extra funding and support, can that happen if it was the council that was looking after all these services? So that's something that really has to be investigated and looked at, because after all, it's not just about savings, it's about the people in our community and what's best for them as well, along with having a proper due governance to do with financial matters. So that's really all I want to say. What the question was, would that be looked at as well, the partnerships then, sort of moving forward in a hypothetical situation if it was brought back in-house?
Have we got an answer there? Mr. Lorry?
Yes, thank you, Provost. I mean, I suppose the short answer to that question is yes. I mean, I think it's incumbent on us, if that decision is taken, that we look at all of the opportunities that are available to us in terms of funding and support, and how it integrates with the work of the council and how our partners can support that. And I suppose the broader point is, I mean, whatever the status of the trust, the need for partnership and the need to seek additional and new routes for funding is going to always be important.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Nimmo has spoken, but he had his hand up there. Councillor Nimmo?
Thanks, Convener. I'd actually put a message to you in the chat box there under a 19.1. I was mentioned previously there by Councillor Alexander, and I'd just like to clarify what it was I actually said. In no way was I defending the Westminster Government. What I said was that the cuts coming from Westminster to the Scottish Government, heavier cuts were passed on by the SNP in Edinburgh to local authorities. That's what I said. In no way was I defending Westminster whatsoever. Thanks, Provost.
Okay, good point taken. Councillor Meikle-John, would you like to wind up? I think it's been a very, very good debate, and I'm quite sure that members will be desperate to take a decision here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Provost. I will try and do my best, but there's a whole host of points which I would want and try to address. Firstly, a bit disappointed in Councillor Coombs, a seasoned politician, but I see why she has to defend her position in relation to the trust. But I would have thought that, considering the responsibility of an elected member, she would have taken a more pragmatic view and looked to work a bit more collaboratively. What she has done is taken advantage of a situation to politic it and seek to stir up communities unnecessarily when decisions aren't actually being taken, and that's just something that is not helpful to the council as a whole, and it reflects on all of us as councillors. I believe in doing that, and it doesn't put us in a good light at all, any of us. She's also more or less abdicated her group's position on financial governance, and she will certainly be advocating that the council look to mitigate and underwrite the 4 million. I can understand why she would want to do that, but the reality is we need to be responsible here and recognise there's a finite budget that we have to work within, and that will result in having to make some pretty tough decisions, and it's wrong that people should opt out of that. And I would just want to highlight, without going over too much of old ground, that she has also criticised the council, and she was part of that decision-making process too, that year on year we have rejected saving proposals brought forward by the trust, which she is part of the trust we're responsible in developing. So we've got to a point where we've basically tied both the trust and the council's hands, and that's not something that is going to be of any use to us going forward into the budget deliberations. The majority of members here know that the things aren't right with the trust, the relationship's not right, otherwise we would not be in this position, we would not be having this debate. And we have tried twice now to change that, and fundamentally we've just not got to the right outcome, and that's why we're here today, and we need to find a way to do that. As has been highlighted by my colleagues, we're not being asked to take a decision today. There's options within the paper to look at alternatives, ways forward, and I don't hear any alternative other than stay as we are from the Labour group. I don't think that is going to be helpful, because we will just continue to go into this cycle of lack of decision making that we've gone into for the last Humpty Dumpty years. it's all very well using Audit Scotland when it suits us in relation to the responsibilities for ALIOs, but we also have to take on board the comments made by Audit Scotland about best value. They need to progress with our financial plans and they need to make some of these big decisions, particularly around the SPR as well. And it's all very well the Labour group taking the higher moral ground here, but they need to recognise the seriousness of the situation and the pandemic that we are in. They also need to look at where they are in the polls at the moment, and you know, by advocating responsibility about taking tough decisions, how on earth are our public going to view that? And all that we're going to do by looking to not take any cuts from within the trust is move the cuts elsewhere within the council and put additional pressures, as has been done year on year when we have not taken some of the savings that have been put forward by the trust. I absolutely accept that, you know, the trust have tried to bring forward the savings, and that's been a choice that elected members have had to take. Scottish Government have provided additional funding to the Trust. There's some fundings come through the furlough, but there's also some loss of income funds that have come forward. There's Creative Scotland, and there's a number of other avenues that have been funded, and as have local. However, the magnitude of the impact of the pandemic will be felt for quite some time to come, and we still need to continue to have those discussions with government. But as has been said, the Scottish Government is constrained in the amount of funding that it has to be able to share out across its portfolio areas, and particularly into local government, who have led the response to this pandemic. So while we've had a lot of pontifications here today, what we've not had is any constructive discussions, particularly from the Labour group. I'm really supportive, really appreciate the support of the Conservative group in going forward, because it gives us the option to have those discussions. And the difference I think that we'll make in January is we'll be able to have a better view of what the Trust's proposals actually are, and the impacts of those proposals in relation to filling that 4 to 5 million gap, and look at how we can work collaboratively together, because I have no doubt that there'll be hard decisions that will be brought forward to Council to be asked to make, and they will not be very palatable, but what we have to do is weigh up what is palatable, what can be not like but have to live with, in order to be able to balance our budget and be able to continue to fund critical services going forward. And that's why I think that we are not in a position to take a decision in relation to the future options at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. Now go to the vote. Mr. Moody.
Yes, thank you, Provost. We have a motion moved by Councillor Meikle-John and seconded by Councillor Bowes in relation to item 6A on your agenda, against which there is an amendment moved by Councillor Coombs and seconded by Councillor Bissett. Both the motion and the amendment have been displayed on screen, and the motion circulated to all members. Provost Buchanan.
Further discussion, so I'll go for the motion. Thank you.
Deputy Provost.
Motion.
Councillor Aitchison.
Amendment.
Councillor Alexander.
Motion.
Councillor Balfour.
The motion.
Councillor Binney.
Motion.
Councillor Bissett.
Amendment.
Councillor Black.
Amendment.
Councillor Blackwood.
Amendment.
Councillor Bowes.
Motion.
Councillor Coleman.
The motion.
Councillor Colley.
The motion.
Councillor Coombs.
The amendment.
Councillor Flynn.
Sorry, motion.
Thank you. Councillor Garner.
Motion.
Councillor Goldie.
Yeah, Mr. Moody, I don't think we're hearing Councillor Goldie, but he's wrote in the chat box that he'll be supporting the amendment.
Yes, thank you. I see that in the chat box. It's nothing to confirm that. We'll note that as for the amendment. Councillor Grant.
The motion.
Councillor Harris.
On the motion.
Councillor Hughes.
The motion.
Councillor Kerr.
Motion.
Councillor McHugh.
For the motion.
Councillor McCluckie.
Amendment.
Councillor Meiklejohn.
For the motion.
Councillor Monroe.
For the motion.
Councillor Murtagh.
The motion.
Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Nicholl, we didn't hear that. I wonder if you could repeat. Sorry, we can't hear you again, Councillor Nicholl. I'm not sure if you're able to put your video camera on to indicate. We'll come back to Councillor Nicholl shortly. Councillor Nimmo.
Amendment.
Councillor Patrick.
For the motion.
Councillor Reid.
Amendment.
Thank you. And Councillor Spears.
Motion.
Thank you. Coming back to Councillor Nicholl, I wonder if you could make contact.
Mr. Moody, Mr. Councillor Malcolm has just texted me saying he's having difficulty, but tell them the motion. I don't know if that's acceptable or not.
I think since that's been a message contemporary during the course of the voting, that's acceptable. Provost, there are 21 votes for the motion. There are 9 votes for the amendment. The motion is carried.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thanks, everybody. That was a lengthy debate, but very important. That takes us now to the second part of item 6, which is 6B, is the Falkirk Community Trust Business Plan. Now, I'm just going to clarify with Mr. Moody the position here. Does members would like to see the second part of that motion up on the screen again? Or is everybody content that they know what we're going to be discussing?
Obviously, as the first motion no superseded that by it being agreed.
I'll pass you on to Mr. Moody for legal clarification on that matter.
Thank you, Provost. The question is, does the decision on the first item supersede the second one? I think the answer to that is no, but maybe to clarify the situation, we have a motion moved on item 6B and seconded, which is to agree to the requests from the Trust and allow the discussions to proceed. There's been no amendment moved to that, and I think nothing said particularly against that proposal during the course of the debate that's already taken place. So I think, Provost, it may be a simple matter of just clarifying that members are in agreement with the proposal in 6B that came forward from Councillor Meiklejohn.
Okay, members, you've heard Mr. Moody. Are members content to agree the recommendation in 6B for the... Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That takes us now to item 7 on your agenda. It's the Falkirk Integration Joint Board Business Case 221 to 22. Patricia Cassidy will present the report and it's pages 124 to 134. Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I will introduce the report and I'll hand over to Gillian Thompson, who's our Chief Finance Officer, to take you through the detail of it. The report presents the 2021-2022 business case for the Falkirk Integration Joint Board. It summarises the IGB's funding requirements and also financial planning assumptions for the forthcoming financial year. And it forms the initial basis for the negotiations with the Council and also with the NHS Forth Valley in relation to the payments for 2021-22. The paper has been presented to the IGB's recent meeting on the 20th of November and was agreed there, and it's here for the Council's consideration. I'll hand over to Gillian. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. So, as Patricia says, the business case really outlines the IGB's funding requirements and the broad financial planning assumptions for the forthcoming financial year 21-22. As Patricia said, it was approved by the IGB on the 20th of November, and that approval was to inform discussions and feedback from the Council in terms of their funding contribution for next year. I have to point out that there are a number of key uncertainties in the financial planning process at this stage, and also there's been a high level assumptions have been used to inform some of the figures. Therefore, ultimately the figures are subject to change. That's once a number of assumptions would be expected to be confirmed in the coming months. In the meantime, a number of assumptions have been made in relation to funding uplifts, in relation to pay rises, in relation just to general price inflation, contractual uplifts in terms of external and independent providers, and also the ongoing impact of a number of national policy initiatives, including the Scottish Living Wage and the Carers Act. What the business case does not include is any additional costs associated with the impact of Brexit, the ongoing recurrent impact of the pandemic. So in line with Scottish Government guidance, that has been tracked and monitored separately. Obviously, there's going to be key recurring areas there, particularly around PPE, the care home assurance process, staffing implications around ongoing impact of test and protect, and of course now potential vaccination programmes as well. Obviously, there's a number of new national policy developments as well that have not been included in the business case, specifically in relation to the independent review of adult social care services, which is underway at the moment and expected to report back in January. So in terms of the initial estimates, section 5 in the business case sets out the impact of the financial plan and assumptions. It's suggested that recurring base budgets are expected to increase by around 6.8 million. However, the corresponding inflationary pressures are expected to be around 13.2 million, and as a result, there's a financial gap of 6.4 million. Quite clearly then, there's a requirement for efficiency savings and or additional funding contributions from partners. And you can see in section 5 the impact of that by service area. So around £1.9 million of the gap relates to large hospital services, which are the set aside budget, and £4.5 million in relation to the integrated budget. And in terms of the impact by partner, just around £3 million for Falkirk Council and £3.3 million in relation to NHS Forth Valley. In terms of efficiency savings, section 6 in the paper sets out the current position, and a number of high-level themes have been identified at this stage, and that's been supported by around £500,000 Invest to Save fund as well. In terms of key areas, there's two that I would draw to your attention today. The first is around the review of the community bed base, and that's linked to modelling work that we're doing at the moment to look at future demand and capacity across the entire bed base to inform how we reshape traditional bed-based services and move towards more care in the community and care at home. The initial output of that modelling work and the savings there are linked to redesign of the community hospitals budgets and the residential care budgets in terms of the expected reduction in the bed base and care home places. I would point out that's a net saving, so it would be offset by corresponding increased investment in community care and care at home. The other area is in relation to medicines waste, and that's a very broad concept and covers a wide range of issues from medication compliance to the whole reordering process in terms of repeats, but also education and communication with patients in terms of how they use and access their medicines. Now, traditionally, calculating the impact of that waste in the system has been based on medicines that have been returned to community pharmacy, and it's been based, that's effectively clinical waste. So what used to happen in terms of quantifying the potential waste in the system, they would take the disposal, the clinical waste disposal from pharmacies, weigh it, and they would attach a cost per kilogram to that. However, in the last couple of years, there have been developments within practitioner services. So that is the division of National Services Scotland who make the payments to contractors, where they have been able to develop an algorithm that looks at the actual prescriptions and the directions on those prescriptions. So, for example, take one tablet twice a day. They've been able to then extrapolate and read that information to estimate what they think the total medicines cost would be and compare it to what it actually is, and it won't surprise you to know that there is a difference. Clearly, it's a very complex process, and there are areas where you would expect there to be some real over-ordering, if you like. If you think of the example around inhalers, where you would perhaps expect a patient to have an inhaler that they would carry with them, perhaps one in their place of work, another one that would have, you'd expect them to have spares. So there's tolerances, so I would point out that it's not just straightforward, everything's waste. There will obviously be reasons and a number of variables, but that's a project that is expected to be underway next year. In terms of the capital position, the IJB doesn't hold a capital budget. However, it does play into the capital planning processes of both Falkirk Council and NHS Forth Valley in terms of securing appropriate capital investment to support integration. And a number of proposals totalling just over 1.1 million have been included in the business case as part of the capital bids process. There's also 3 longer term projects that I've referred to in the business case, one of which has already been discussed today around the review and redevelopment of Falkirk Community Hospital. That's just a very quick run through the business case. In terms of the ask of members today, it's effectively for feedback on the business case that we can take back to the IJB and to inform the discussions on the funding requirements for next year. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you both for the report. Go to Councillor Meikle, John.
Thank you, Provost. And my thanks to the IJB and Patricia and Gillian in particular for their bringing forward the business case, particularly at this time where the Health and Social Care Partnership are under significant pressure as it continues to deliver high quality care to vulnerable people and support others within the NHS and the care sector working our way through this pandemic. The IJB have made good progress towards the integration of health and social care services, and with the greater flexibility because of the need to respond to the pandemic, there opportunities to progress areas of transformation which will improve outcomes for the service users and their families. It's important to acknowledge that the IJB has year on year worked to meet its savings target in a challenging environment of a needs-led service with an ageing population with more complex needs. This year has proved to be exceptionally challenging in responding to the pandemic, but there is a commitment to fully fund costs from the government through the mobilisation plans. That's the additional costs. This is being done in tranches, and while there have been funds released, it's likely that there will be a need for more to come forward, and the discussions are ongoing around the areas such as loss of savings, which have been unable to be achieved due to the delay at the areas of work as a result of the pandemic. Business plan as presented to the Council has therefore been adjusted to take into account of the current circumstances, seeking to address the area of overspend by way of mitigation, while still progressing the areas of investment that will continue to transform the services. However, they are still in response mode and in a very dynamic and challenging situation, which could further change as well as not knowing what the additional funding that may come from Scottish Government and the added complexity of the unknown and unquantifiable diverse financial impact. I'll say that again. The unquantifiable adverse financial impact that Brexit may have on health and social care. Already started to see some of the impacts of that, particularly around drugs and prescriptions. Acknowledging that the overall and uncertain financial climate and the Scottish Government are also in as a result is having to react and deal with the pandemic and the budget timescale, I'm therefore going to move the following motion: that we note the business case at this stage, given the uncertainties in the financial assumptions underlying it, but it agrees that it should come. Sorry, I've got the gardeners outside making a noise, so I'm kind of breaking up. I'll start that again. Council moves the business case at this stage, given the uncertainties in the financial assumptions underlying, but it agrees that it should form the basis for further discussion in advance of the budget meeting. And that allows the flexibility to take into account the changing circumstances and the information that then comes forward around the financial planning for Scottish Government and the Council budget. I move the motion, Provost.
Thank you. Have you got a seconder there? Councillor Colley.
Yeah, I would like to second that, and I'll reserve the right to come back in.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, you've heard the motion being moved and seconded. Coming to Councillor Bissett, would you got an amendment to this part, Councillor Bissett?
Thanks, Provost. No, we don't have an amendment to this section at all.
Okay. Councillor Kerr, have you got an amendment to this second part?
No, we haven't an amendment either, Provost. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open it out now. If anybody wants to come in, ask any question to the officers, or just enter the debate. You want to come in, Councillor Colley, at this stage?
Okay, yes, I just wanted to just say, because actually Councillor Meikle-John has covered pretty much everything, but I think I'd want to note the sterling work that Gillian and Patricia have been doing. Gillian joined us at what would say was be quite a strange and unprecedented time, and to note that I think the business plan and the community-based community bed-based modelling, I think whilst the pandemic has created very, very significant challenges, it's also brought opportunity to speed up the pace of change in areas we were already working in. So some of this is not new in terms of Home First, in terms of in the enhanced community team and localities, hospital at home. And for example, the IJPs made a decision to have a community-based gerontologist. I struggled with that word, to support more people at home and in the community. So I think obviously there's a lot of uncertainties at the moment with the partnership being in response mode, continuing to be in response mode, and some of the uncertainties that the council leader mentioned. But I think we need to note our thanks to the team for everything that they're doing.
Thank you very much. We have two hands up, Councillor Blackwood and Councillor Black. We'll go to the lady first, Councillor Black. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. I mean, I too would like to thank Patricia and Gillian, Martin and Lorraine and all the staff, because they've worked really, really hard. I don't think any of us will know how hard they've worked at a time when they're facing pressures they never thought they would have a year ago. And at the same time, the work has to continue and plans have to be made. And I think that COVID-19 has definitely brought home to us, all of us, that being at home is definitely the best place for the majority of our older people. And the delivery plan has a strategy to provide the resources and expertise that will ensure more people can stay at home for longer. And if they need to go to the hospital, it'll be for a far shorter period of time, and the focus will be on their reablement. But on page 131, we can see in the Falkirk area, it's hoped that around 1.65 million can be saved from medicine waste. And I was going to ask questions about that, but I think Gillian really gave us a really good lengthy explanation about that. And that was really helpful. But there are simple things that all of us can do to stop that waste. And it's like the public, for example, can use all medicines that are ordered. Don't not stockpile medicine. If you stop taking it, tell your GP, and before you leave the chemist, check that you've got the right medicine, because once you walk out that door, they won't take it back, they won't use it again. So I think that's stressed for me that it's really important that every one of us try and protect our health service as much as possible, and that is one good way of doing so, because the extra money that 1.6 million, 5 million is going to save, that extra money could be used for physiotherapists in the community, or it could be used to help deliver the GP, the primary care improvement plan. That was all I wanted to say, Provost. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your input. Councillor Blackwood.
Thanks, Provost. Provost, I'd certainly welcome the approach of care in the community, and care at home. But I see that as could reduce the need for care home beds. And I'm worried about the private sector, because I recall Beeld, because they want to maximising their profit, they pulled out the service. And I'm just wondering if we're concerned about other private care homes doing similar, and where would that leave Falkirk Council?
Okay, I'll ask any of the two officers that spoke would like to come back in on that question for Councillor Blackwood.
If I could come back in, Provost, please.
Thank you, Patricia.
Yeah, we've been very mindful of that and any level of risk right from the beginning of COVID. We were one of the first partnership areas to get into discussions and to make sustainability arrangements for our providers in advance of the government's scheme to provide those payments. At the moment, on average, care homes are operating about 80% of their occupancy, and there is a direct funding coming through from the government to assist them with that. But over the summer period, we had over 200 vacant care home beds in the Falkirk area, which indicates that potentially we have oversupply in the area. So that is something that we will need to address in the medium to long term. At the moment, the sustainability payments continue. It was originally planned that they would begin tapering off by now, but the government has confirmed that those will continue at the existing level. We are doing work with our local providers. We work very closely with the providers and also with Scottish Care, that is the umbrella organisation for a number of the providers. And we're continuing with those discussions. The community capacity modelling that Councillor Colley referred to is a significant exercise we've undertaken across Forth Valley to look at community hospital beds, community beds and other models of care that will inform our plans going forward and underpin our delivery plan. So that work has had initial workshop with our strategic planning group and with our board members, and we're just doing a bit of quality assurance work, and that will be the foundation for our plans going forward in terms of what a potential demand is, but also if we're increasing our care in the community, we should therefore see a concurrent decrease in the need for bed-based care in our community. So it's to be expected that we would be looking with our providers at actually what is it that we need to commission in terms of the demand, and therefore what supply would we be looking for. So I hope that's helpful, Councillor Blackwood. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Patricia. That was very helpful.
Okay. Okay, well, just to see where we are, with a motion moved and seconded with no amendment, we'll get Councillor McCluskey wanting in.
Aye, thanks, Provost. It was just a comment that the Leader of the Council made that, about Brexit already having an impact to prescriptions and things. I wonder if Patricia could add to that, because I get bags and that, our families get bags and bags of prescriptions, and I've never had an issue. We didn't even ken the outcome of Brexit yet, because obviously the talks are still ongoing. So I was just wondering, what is the facts? Is there issues to do with prescriptions and anything to do with Brexit? And what would be the, and if there is, what would be the impact of putting a border up at doing it Gretna there? You know what I mean? Would that not have an impact on us? But as I say, if Patricia could answer that question, please.
We're answering the question about the impact on prescriptions. Yep. No any border. Thank you.
Okay, no, it wouldn't be for me to comment on that. Thank you. Well, as you would expect, the Health Service is anticipating any impact of Brexit or no deal Brexit and looking at the supply of drugs. The majority of the drugs that are used in Scotland do touch Europe in some way, shape or form, whether as part of their manufacture or their transportation. So it is a significant issue. There are also issues in relation to the cost of some drugs, which can increase quite dramatically. There's been a recent example of that where quite a well-used drug suddenly had a huge increase in price. So all of these factors are being monitored nationally as well as locally. But there is a volatility in the prescribing budget, which we have highlighted in previous reports, but we're just particularly concerned about that increased volatility that will be potentially as a result of Brexit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Potentially. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr, did you have your hand up yet? Thank you, sir. You need to unmute. Thank you.
Try and do that, Provost. Thank you.
Thank you.
Provost, I would also like to congratulate Patricia, Gillian and their teams on an excellent report. It's refreshing when a report comes to Council where they identify where the problems are and where they bring solutions forward to the Council. Very refreshing and very professional. I'd like to congratulate both Patricia and Gillian. we, as it's been said, Provost, when people are coming out of the hospital and back to their homes, we as a council will play a big part in that, regarding adaptability for people's homes, if it's not already done. So getting that right first time will be crucial for these people coming to hospital. So I look forward to working with Patricia and her team going forward and trying to do the best for the residents of Falkirk. Thank you, Provost.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify the position, we have a motion moved and seconded. Do we agree on the recommendation? Councillor Grant, sorry, and Councillor Bissett, sorry there. Councillor Grant first.
Sorry, Provost. Councillor Kerr asked my question and answered it for us. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bissett wanted in, I believe. I haven't got you on my screen.
Thanks, Provost. I just wanted to echo the sentiments that have came from most people, regarding the team, Patricia and her team. I think they've adapted very well to these extraordinary times, and all commendation to them. It's stress that's been upon everybody really has been felt across the whole spectrum of all different walks of life. So it's just to say that and keep up the good work. And I would also echo what Councillor Kerr said, that there tends to be an identification of problems and solutions brought forward, which is always welcome. There doesn't seem to be a great deal of difficulty when Mrs Cassidy brings forward reports. It outlines exactly where we need to be and how we'll get there, no matter how difficult that may be. I just wanted to ask a question around the vaccine. Are we logistically prepared for that, for delivering the vaccine? And I just wanted to touch on mental health, which is there's been an explosion of mental health issues really, with people being isolated, people becoming anxious and depressed. And I just wondered, there isn't a great deal of focus at times on the physical health, and I just wondered, are we trying to increase provision on mental health? It's very difficult for people to get an appointment with a psychiatrist or psychologist, so I just wondered, are we trying to increase that? Because I suspect that need will be there going forward. And that's basically all I wanted to say, Provost. Thank you.
Would you like me to answer that, Provost? Perhaps if I can come in, Provost, if that's okay.
Come in.
Thank you,
Patricia.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bissett. Mental health is a key priority for the Community Planning Partnership and for the Integration Joint Board, as it is for the Clackmannanshire Stirling Integration Joint Board. We see one of the key priorities to develop a overarching mental health strategy. We are very concerned at the emerging evidence that there is around the potential demand for services which the pandemic may have caused an increase in. So we are looking with our colleagues at how we respond to that need, but also in terms of the whole system and the pathways in and out of support services, and particularly preventative services at a lower level, to immediately help people who are experiencing some difficulty to avoid it developing into perhaps a more serious psychiatric disorder. So yes is the answer to your question. We are mindful of that and we are planning across Forth Valley. In relation to the vaccination programme, that is moving at quite a considerable pace, and there is emerging information and guidance coming through almost on a daily basis. My colleagues at NHS Forth Valley are developing the plans for the vaccination programmes at the moment, and we'll be linking in with the Resilience Partnership and the councils for the support with some of the logistics around the vaccination programmes. So that is something which is moving at pace. That I can give you an assurance that there's a lot of planning going on, but it is very reactive at the moment because of the emerging. You'll be aware the vaccine has just been approved this morning, so that will allow things to move at an increased pace. So we will keep you briefed and up to date with that programme as it is finalised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Just a quick question for Patricia, if I can. Just regarding the council's essential workers and the £500 bonus that's just been announced in the press recently. Can you give us some sort of indication as to how many members of staff will actually attract this? Thanks, Provost.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are still working through that with colleagues in HR and I think through COSLA as well, because although the announcement has been made, the fine detail of that has not yet been fully made available. So we would expect the umbrella of the people who are supporting the delivery of health and social care would be there, but we don't actually know the detail of the staff groupings and also in relation to our providers as well. But I can certainly share that with you once that becomes available. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Patricia. I look forward to the further information. Thank you.
Councillor Alexander, I believe you get your hand up.
Just to echo and associate myself with the praises that's come by the joint board. It's an excellent report and it's excellent performance as well. Can I ask, in terms of the mental health issues, can I ask if what the additional resources will be available from Scottish Government on that particular programme?
Thank you. I don't know if Gillian wants to come in and answer that. Thanks. The detail of that is still to be confirmed at this stage, but there is significant funding around the Action 15 recommendations in terms of investment in mental health. So I'm very happy to provide a detailed report if that would be helpful on the actual mental health strands of expenditure within the plan.
Okay. Thank you. Okay then, I think there's been a good debate on that. Just before we go to agree, is there anybody else? Can we agree? The recommendation contained within the report.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Now, this takes us to the last item on the agenda. It could be lengthy. We're looking at the time. What the time now, Mr. Perry? It's the back of 1 o'clock, so we've been going for over 3 hours. Do you want a small break, comfort break, or do you want a longer break to have a cup of tea? It's up to you. I'm in your hands.
I would personally just carry on, convener, but Provost, that's just me.
What does other members feel?
I would agree.
I would agree with carrying
We're
on,
just
but I
going to carry
understand
on.
some members have had problems with food in the past and they had to eat at certain times.
Yeah, well, I'm one of them, but I'm fine at the moment because I'm on.
Provost, could we have...
Happy to continue.
Provost, I'm one of the members that obviously has a medical condition that wants eating at certain times, the same as yourself, but I'm quite happy to continue. I can munch a biscuit while we continue working, so I'm quite happy to do that.
Well, what I propose though is we're going to have a small comfort break then, because this could go on quite. So we'll see you back between 5 and 10 minutes, okay? And that'll be everybody fine. We'll just go to the conclusion. Thanks, everybody. Karen, can you get us back in? Thank you. Perfect. We're just checking to see if everybody's back. Thank you. Alan's there. Yep. There's Jim. I think so. Okay then, thank you very much. We'll now reconvene with the last item on your agenda, which is item 8. It's the annual report of the Chief Social Work Officer, 2019 to 20. Standing Order 2011 applies to this item and permits general discussion on the report, which is for noting. The report will be presented by Sarah Lacey, and it's pages 135 to 183 on your agenda. Thank you very much. Sarah, thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I'm pleased to present my Chief Social Work Officer's annual report to Council today. Chief Social Work Officers are required to submit an annual report in accordance with Scottish Government guidance. The report provides an overview of how the statutory responsibilities have been fulfilled by the Chief Social Work Officer during 2019-20. This year, given the workload implications caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, Scottish Government proposed a much reduced template to enable Chief Social Work Officers to present shortened reports for local governance structures. This year's report, attached to Appendix 1, provides a summary overview of social work activity across Falkirk. It includes key developments, challenges, and service quality information. It doesn't cover every dimension of social work practice, and it doesn't replicate other governance arrangements which scrutinise service performance throughout the year. Within the introduction of the report, I reference the challenges this year has presented for social work, and I welcome the opportunity given within the government template to include a section out with the normal reporting year to reflect some of the early indications of impact from COVID-19. Section 1 of the annual report provides an overview of the governance arrangements and role of the Chief Social Work Officer. The Chief Social Work Officer role was established to ensure the provision of appropriate professional advice and the discharge of statutory functions as they relate to social work services. This statutory role assists the local authority, the Integration Joint Board and their partners to understand the complexities and cross-cutting nature of social work delivery, particularly in relation to issues such as corporate parenting, child protection, adult protection and the management of high-risk offenders. This section of the report outlines a number of key strategic governance groups such as Adult and Child Protection Committees, Clinical and Care Governance Committee and MAPA. Key achievements are highlighted. Section 2 outlines service quality and performance. Detailed within is data and comparison data in a number of areas covering children's, justice and adult social work services. Section 3 relates to resources. Financial pressures are briefly outlined and service areas have clear, accountable transformation plans in place to reduce pressures on budgets, while focusing on the ambition to improve outcomes for people in Falkirk. Some aspects of transformation focused on service remodelling has been paused or it has slowed up due to COVID-19, but some aspects have accelerated. The pandemic has undoubtedly placed significant additional pressures on financial resources. Costs of PPE, delays for children in care placements and additional staffing costs are considerable. Section 4 of the annual report provides an overview of the social work workforce. Our workforce remains the single most important resource in delivering high quality services, and the transformation required to ensure the delivery of health and social care integration and integrated children's services, and a shift to a whole one council ethos. Our commitment to involving members of the workforce in projects and pilots focused on collaboration between services has enabled us to focus on reducing duplication and share services wherever possible across public, third and private sectors. Examples of this work is evidenced throughout the report, but section 6 highlights specific examples. Workforce development and training opportunities are highlighted here, as are some areas where we're experiencing challenges in relation to recruitment. Workforce wellbeing features in this section, and this is an area we are collectively invested in. Social care is always challenging emotionally and physically, but this year we're seeing the impact of stress and fatigue. Taking action to identify and reduce stress in the workplace has seen us increase awareness of mental health issues and provide learning and development opportunities aimed at building personal resilience and offering employee assistance programmes. Section 5 of the annual report permits the Chief Social Work Officer to outline some of the early indications of impact on workforce and services due to COVID-19. The majority of social work services are considered to be critical. Therefore, they continue to operate during the national lockdown period. There were a range of complex new challenges to navigate, and all services were impacted in numerous ways. Staff demonstrated how driven they are by their professional ethics and commitment to the relationships that they have with children, adults and families. Services for the young and old continue to be delivered, relationships were maintained and new ones were formed using technology. And when relatives couldn't be alongside their loved ones in care homes, social care staff provided love and care for them when they needed it most. This section outlines some of the complexities of the pandemic which had to be navigated. It highlights issues relating to absence of staff, the guidance we had to interpret and implement, and the need to do things very differently. Recovery plans are in place and they have been enacted, but social work services remain in full COVID-19 response mode. Every day there are new challenges and pressures that are being faced. Support from our partners, volunteers, carers, families and communities have been a really important aspect of our ability to provide support to people in Falkirk, and has been a particular positive to come from such adversity. Everyone deserves thanks for what they've done and continue to do. They are nothing less than exceptional. My annual report concludes at section 6, which I've added to demonstrate examples of collaborative social work. Although children's justice and adult social work services can appear to be separate sectors with their own priorities and service user focus, we do work very hard to ensure that they are closely connected. This close connection between each of the service areas recognises the value that Falkirk places on the person or the family at the centre. Social work exists across the lifespan, and we must ensure that we recognise that when we design services to meet need, that despite the enormity of the pressures that we continue to face as we respond to the everyday challenge and impact of COVID, innovation and transformation is firmly embedded in what drives Falkirk social work services. Our commitment to co-production, good outcomes and sustainable services absolutely remains our priority. Provost, I refer Council to the recommendations detailed at section 2 of the cover report, and I'm joined by Patricia Cassidy, Chief Officer of the IGB, and Martin Tom, Head of Integration of the Health and Social Care Partnership, to answer any questions that members might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah, for that informative report. I'm going to go straight to Councillor Cawley, who will speak on behalf of the administration and the portfolio holder. Thank you, Councillor Cawley.
Thank you very much, Provost. I think anything I'm going to say just now is not going to do justice to the activity that's been going on over the year, and particularly during COVID. The report again represents the depth and breadth of social work services in Falkirk, supporting children, adults and families of all ages. It represents the huge effort and commitment of our staff and the staff of our partners in the third and independent sectors in providing support for people 24/7, 365 days a year. Social work doesn't take a holiday, it doesn't take a day off, it has to be there all the time. I think before I touch on a couple of points, I think I want to echo what Sarah said about the huge effort across social care and social work during COVID-19. Staff have supported the most vulnerable in our community throughout lockdown and restrictions, and there's a point we cannot thank them enough. They've gone above and beyond, led by our Chief Social Work Officer, our Chief Officer and our Heads of Integration and beyond. I'd like to touch on a couple of areas which are some of the foundations that have been put in place to improve the lives of people in our area. Some of them I've spoken about before. I think I want to mention the Living Well Falkirk Centre and the early work, and the Provost were there at the formal opening around preventing and enabling people to maintain their independence. The centre assesses people and helps deliver equipment and adaptations. In its first year, it helped 250 people, and we hope to extend this further into other localities. It is something about maintaining independence, it's about enabling people to stay at home, and I think a key building block of the work has been ongoing. To mention the transitions for young disabled people, the decision was made a while ago to appoint a transitions coordinator, and it's a critical role in improving transition planning across children and adult social services. You'll see on page 181 the achievements of the year in improving this, including central information and resources and integrated assessment across work in health, social work and education, including further education. I'll turn my page. I'd like to mention a couple of things, and specifically the Family Information and Support Line that was launched in the scheme of things relatively recently, a way of providing support to families and young people during this period and during the COVID period and potentially beyond. And I think we've an important role as elected members in promoting that service and ensuring families in our areas know about it. I'd like to, and you know this is an area very close to my heart around carers, unpaid carers, and we know that there's been a huge commitment for unpaid carers during this period, and the work of for example, Falkirk Carer Centre and our services in supporting that has been critical. I'd like to mention, which some of you may have seen on television, the New Carers campaign that has been launched about how do we reach more people who may be struggling on alone during COVID, and how do we reach more carers. So again, promoting that message about there is help out there and there is support in Falkirk District for unpaid carers. Finally, and I'd like to recognise the work of Justice Services. The Education, Children and Young People's Committee recently received a briefing on the excellent work of our Justice Services, including important work in bringing a number of activities to improve the health, wellbeing support services, such as the CPN, Keep Well Nurses and Working in Tackling Inequalities project. These aim to achieve quicker access to services amongst often hard to reach individuals, often with a complexity of issues. This, along with other justice services, offers a holistic service aimed at tackling offending behaviour and the factors that contribute to it. I think sometimes it's something that we don't touch on too much in relation to social work services, but they've been doing really important work and challenging very important work during COVID. So I think I wanted to pay a particular mention to them. So these are just, I mean, as I said, I can't do justice to this in what I'm speaking about, but there's huge activity in social work services. And I think, again, just to express thanks to Sarah as a Chief Social Work Officer, I certainly very much value the advice that she provides to the Health and Social Care Partnership and the IJB, and to thank all our leaders and staff across the services.
Okay, thank you very much. I totally agree with everything you said. We've all got, I think, a strong admiration for people in that service from the top to the bottom. Anybody else like to come in at this stage? Councillor Alison Black. Thank you, Alison.
Thanks, Provost. I'd also like to thank Sarah for her excellent report. I think our staff have went above and beyond in so many ways over the last 8 months, having to adapt very quickly to new ways of working, having to learn about infection control, wearing PPE, having to work from home. So a lot to take on board, and they've done it magnificently. I'd also like to highlight and thank all the staff who work in care homes. They've had to deal with issues that you'd only expect in an acute hospital ward. And Patricia at a recent meeting said very eloquently, care homes are a person's home, and the staff who work in those homes have done their very best to look after those residents in a professional and caring manner. And the IJB and public health team have worked hand in hand to support, encourage and advise those care homes in our area. It's been an added responsibility that they've had to take on, and they've done so with great sensitivity. I don't think any of us will ever know how much hard work is going on behind the scenes to ensure that our most vulnerable citizens do have the best care possible. And I'd also like to say a big thank you, and again, along with Fiona, to the unpaid carers who have had their loved one at home 24/7, in some cases with no support except maybe over the phone. And at a recent IGB meeting, we did hear from the Carers Centre how that they've been trying to use their imagination to do things differently to try and still offer support in these really difficult times when people have to self-isolate, maybe giving people iPads or maybe complementary therapy treatments, things like that. But a lot of carers are really getting tired. The festive season can be very difficult. And is there anything at all that we can do to give carers extra support, as we still have the winter to get through before the vaccination programme will start to have effect? So I just, ask the question, what else could we do? Because we all know that those carers are sitting and they're really starting to struggle now. So thanks, Provost.
No, thank you. We know you've got a wealth of experience in that field. And anybody else like to come in at this stage? Now, you may hear a noise in the background, but they're chopping trees down outside our office as we're speaking. So, Councillor McKee, you wanted to come in.
Councillor Spears.
Councillor McKee, then Councillor Spears. Thank you.
Right, thank Provost. What I would like to ask was, initially when COVID started, I was getting a lot of complaints. Obviously, when the public weren't getting to see their loved ones, that caused, obviously, and was well documented initially, and we wanted to understand that. But one of the issues I was getting from staff was they're quite unhappy, you could say, that doctors and that weren't coming in to, obviously, because of the threat of COVID or COVID symptoms in some of the homes. I didn't get the, obviously, complaints later on. So did progress be made there so that doctors were going in later on, because it did seem to improve? Well, I wasn't getting the complaints that are the concerns from staff and that I was getting before. It was left to them to help treat and do their best for the people that were showing symptoms. Thank you.
Okay, maybe Patricia could come back on that question.
Thank you, Provost. We learned very early on in COVID that we needed to have a good, strong clinical presence in the homes if there were any positive residents or staff. And so we have what's called the CHART team, which is a team of GPs and advanced nurses and others who will go into a care home and assess all of the residents and ensure that they have got proper care plans in place and any medication or care that they need. So that was developed really within the first few weeks of COVID. Prior to that, there are arrangements in some of the care homes that people retain their family GP, which can mean that individual GPs were assessing their own patients, as you would expect, but actually they didn't necessarily have an overview of the number of other residents in that care home who were perhaps becoming ill or were already ill. So there's been a range of intensive supports put in. We were able to deploy a consultant geriatrician into the community, and we're continuing that through the hospital at home service that Gillian mentioned earlier on. We've also got experienced infection and prevention and control nurses who are working closely with us, and also our colleagues from palliative care to support any of the residents who are in an end-of-life position. So there's a number of developments have taken place as a result of COVID, and a number of those we would be aiming to sustain once we're through this pandemic. So thank you for your question.
Councillor Spears, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to associate myself, as most councillors would, with the comments Fiona Colley, the portfolio holder, who I cannot think of anybody in that position who could have done a more stalwart job and most difficult job that I've ever known a convener or portfolio to have to face in my political career. So I think the thanks should go much wider, and I personally would like to thank you, Fiona. You've been very, very informative and kept us up to date and been great. But especially the social work service, I'd like to thank. As you know, in Grangemouth, we're running one of the biggest food banks in the district, and they have been tremendous in not just the referrals to us, but helping us to deal with various cases, and I think we've worked well in conjunction. And I would say that for all the food banks and charities within the district who've went the extra length at this same time. And I think there should be a message goes out for this council, thanking them profusely and thanking the volunteer section and charities that have worked so hard through this pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spears. I think we all agree with your sentiments. There's a lot of heroes out there and they're working tirelessly, putting themselves in danger every minute of every day. And as I said at the very beginning, before I opened up the meeting, that our heartfelt thanks goes out to all of them. Anybody else like to come in at this stage? I'll bring you back in, Councillor Colley. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Provost. I'd just like to thank Sarah for an excellent report once again. And when I'm doing the thanking, personally, I'd like to thank Councillor Colley. I've got friends who live in Falkirk who was the wife was at her wit's end, and Fiona stepped in and helped the family. So as a personal thing, I really like to thank for the work that she's done for the friends of mine. Well, social work has grown over the years as a department that's reached most families in the area, especially in this pandemic. I mean, I've seen growing the social work department didn't have all the different departments that it's got now. People didn't see it as them having them years ago. And it has grown in size and stature. And it's an area that is expanding year on year. As previous speakers have stated, our staff have gone over and above their duties. I'd just like a quick question for Sarah. With regards to, because our staff will be getting tired, as we've previously stated, how has the absence been regarding our social work department?
Is it going to be Sarah or Patricia will come in on that one?
I'm certainly happy, Provost, to pick up the question, and if Patricia would like to come in and add anything specific in relation to the Health and Social Care Partnership, then I'm sure she would be happy to do that. Councillor Kerr, you are right to acknowledge the demands, and absolutely absence is another pressure that is around for the service, and importantly for the service delivery to the people that are in need of the support that we provide. Over the past few months since the national lockdown, we've experienced absence in many different forms. So typical usual absence in relation to people's own personal circumstances, meaning that they needed to participate in shielding, underlying health conditions, but we have absolutely recorded a high level of absence as a result of stress, work-related stress. We are very closely monitoring the position, certainly within the Health and Social Care Partnership. They are monitoring the position on a daily basis, and across other aspects of social work service. I'm looking really to replicate that kind of daily contact with our absenteeism. And that really is to understand how that is impacting on day-to-day delivery, and also making sure that we're targeting supports to be able to get people back to work, to support people back to work. People will want to be back to work if they're able to come back to work. So it is no doubt having an impact. However, in terms of the weekly data reporting that we have been required to do for Scottish Government for now many months, we are able to track the most critical service delivery has been undertaken. We're not falling behind a national position on that. So I can provide some assurance, but certainly something that is critical for us, and that we really must make sure that we maintain really accurate awareness of and stay alert to any impacting issues. Hopefully that helps, and Patricia may want to pick some extended points.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Sarah. We just need to support, as Councillor Black says, if there's areas where we can support our staff, we need to do it, and I'm sure that you and your team will be doing that. Thanks very much for your reply. Thanks.
Councillor Black, I'm coming back to you because I believe they had a question that we didn't hear because of the tree chopping. Did you have a question that you wanted answered?
Yeah, well, I did ask a question about what is there anything at all extra we can give, help, support we can give for carers, you know, anything at all, because like they are struggling and they're getting tired. I mean, unpaid carers.
Okay, we'll go back to either Sarah or Patricia to come back on that one. Sarah.
Thanks, Provost. Councillor Colley has already noted that there is a national campaign ongoing, and I think that is really a positive development, because we don't necessarily know all of those unpaid carers that are out there doing that incredibly important job of looking after other people, and other people rely on that care enormously. The work that some of it has been described in the annual report, we are working as a multi-agency group and constantly refreshing our strategy around our support to carers. Very importantly, over the last 2 years or so, we really have developed our adaptation and service design to be co-design. So Councillor Black, I think it's really important that we continue to work alongside our unpaid carers, that we do our level best to find them and know about them and offer support and develop relationships with them that are trusting, and that we hear what they need and we consider that. And you described earlier just some of the creative ideas that have been around already that have really developed over the pandemic. People not letting delays set in to what is the right support that needs to be provided. And I think it's more of that. It's not losing what we've learned through the pandemic, just about really timely supports and being creative and when people are looking for something, recognising that they know what they need probably more than anybody else, and doing our level best to work collectively to respond to that. Over Christmas and New Year, we will be making sure that we don't have gaps in supports. We will be doing our best to make sure that we have information available and that we have as smooth an undertaking around support as we possibly can, because the festive period, as you rightly say, is really difficult and carers are tired.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. A small point on what's been happening in the last while. It's small, but not really. Is the PPE side. There was at the start of this pandemic, there was a world grab for PPE, and when I had seen when Sarah became involved in it, I seen how well organised it was. As you know, I was involved with doing face visors with Larbert High. But the difference, Sarah, that you made, you organised it, and there was just I had no further people complaining to me about PPE, and I thank you for that, because without PPE and RPE, people couldn't have went and done the work that they did, and your detail on that was superb, and I just thank you for it.
Okay, thanks for your comments, and is there anybody else like to come in? Councillor Murtagh?
Just very quickly, Provost, I also obviously associate myself with all the remarks which have been made by previous councillors in thanking the staff, and indeed if Councillor Spears hadn't mentioned specifically to mention the contribution that Councillor Colley has made in this very, very difficult time. And I know that as our portfolios cross over in this area and to do with justice services and social work, and the integration, and as she mentioned, as Councillor Colley mentioned, the work that's been done by the teams there, and as another example of how that one council approach has become even more pivotal than ever, and everything that we've seen from integrating with volunteers, integrating with our different services, whether it's children's services, and the role that they've played in a different way from welfare and integration with social work in throughout the pandemic. So I think it's important that and anybody that will have come to or seen the executive live, the Education Young People executive live from the last meeting, that saw that presentation in the incredible detail that Ali Walls, our service manager there, gave about the impact and the work done by the staff in justice services. Can't fail to, I think, to have been impressed by the depth of what's going on there, and how different levels of council and our overall plan come together when it comes to that. So I'd also very much praise and associate myself with the remarks that Councillor Colley made about that service. It's not a service that we often see come to council or come to our committees, and that I was very pleased therefore that it could come to the Education and Young People Committee in order to give that public and in-depth explanation of what's there. So I would echo that, and I know not all members would have had the opportunity to see that, but it is obviously, we have the wonders of modern technology and live recordings there, that information. So thank you absolutely to all our staff, and I hope that they all do get some form of break, our unpaid carers and our paid staff, and indeed many of our councillors here who have been working the extra mile over and above through the whole pandemic, and to do whatever they could for their communities too, which I think needs to be mentioned also, because many of them have done absolutely amazing job, including, as my ward partner Councillor Bowes said, some of the integration work with communities, which has been fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McHugh.
Thanks, Provost. I'd like to add my thanks, along with all the other councillors that have raised their voices this afternoon with regards to social services. I'd like to thank Sarah personally. I'd also like to thank our Director of Children's Services, Robert Naylor, and for the whole team that have pulled together. Yes, our portfolios all do crisscross over, and I think the work that's been done between the different services has been fantastic. I'd particularly like to highlight some of the family support workers that have gone out to critical families, putting themselves in harm's way to support some of our most vulnerable families throughout our district. So I just want to give my thanks to everyone, and yeah, I hope we're all keeping safe. We do have some form of risk over the period. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those words. Thank you. Is there anybody else then coming in? Councillor Meikle-John.
Provost, I would just like to formally second the recommendations in the report, and I'm not going to continue to repeat what I've said, but acknowledge that the magnitude of the work that is ongoing within the breadth of social work services and all that it takes in, and that has continued along with areas of work and transformation that have continued to take place in very challenging circumstances for the period of time, and that is all about improving outcomes for those that use the services, and we should never ever forget that that's our aim in all of this, and that is no mean feat, even taking out of context the pandemic, but just the financial challenges that brings. And that's what we should be remember, and the huge amount of work that staff have put in and the dedication, and there's not been a 9-to-5 job over recent times. It's been 24/7 in some cases, and that has to be acknowledged. But I think over and above that, it's the commitment and the passion that our staff actually have about improving outcomes for people that need to have the service. Our young people, our older people, our young people, right across, and at the same time supporting the voluntary groups and the development of a number of other strands, particularly within health and social care, around the voluntary sector, and developing that within the localities. And there's been huge strides made over the last couple of years, and a lot of that is down to the close working relationship between Councillor Colley, so the portfolio holder, Sarah, and indeed Patricia, as well as working with our other colleagues as Laura and Adana, as the other portfolios that come across that, and that gives me a lot of confidence that that collaboration is to the benefit of everyone in Falkirk District, and a credit to this council.
Okay, thank you. I think we totally agree. Was there anybody else wanted to come in now?
Yes, Convener. Councillor Bissett.
Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, Provost. I'd just like to associate myself with the comments as well. I think it's a great report, and it would take a long time to, you could talk about it for an hour, still no cover it. I totally agree with that Councillor Colley does a really great job. The feedback that I've had is that she does a good job. I'd also like to compliment Councillor Black, who I believe works quite well with Councillor Colley in the health field. And Councillor Black gives quality reports back to the Labour group on the health board and IGB. So I think that joined up approach from Councillor Colley and Councillor Black provides the service that we need in the council, and I'm sure the public realises. I'd just like to ask around community payback orders. Since April to November, there's been 128 payback orders completed, and there's 530 still outstanding. Will these be completed, or will some of these be written off? And the other question I wanted to ask, or just statement, would be around the Change Grow Live project that's been commissioned. I've heard great feedback for that, and I'd just like to thank them for the good work they do. I think they're really spreading out throughout the district, and they're communicating with a lot of people, and they're making a significant difference. So I'd just like to thank the council for commissioning that project. So really, that was me just basically saying thanks for the report, and thanks to everybody. I'd also like to say thanks to the public for bearing with this and doing their duty, and in the main sticking to the rules. And hopefully, once the vaccines are administered, our minister will be on the road to recovery. So if I could just maybe get an answer to the one on community payback orders, please. Thank you, Provost.
Sarah, would you like to take this question on board?
Yes, thank you, Provost, I will do. You're absolutely right, Councillor Bissett. There are a number of outstanding hours. There are a number of orders month on month that have been completed. Understandably, elements of unpaid work had to cease, particularly through lockdown. So nationally, there is a deficit in terms of ability to complete hours, and there's a concern about an extension of time, which we have been granted, but whether there might be a decision made that some of those hours will be curtailed. That's not a decision that we make locally, that's a decision that will be taken nationally. And I can, if there's any change in that, make sure that you're alerted to that circumstance, but that's the current position. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you.
Councillor Alexander, I believe you get your hand up.
Sure, muted. Just a quick demonstration of how this has been a whole council reaction to the pandemic. One of the great tragedies is the number of people who will lose their jobs as part of the ongoing problems with the pandemic, and also the impact of and I think in some cases responsible employer. So that's something that we have to recognise all the way through. Understandably, the focus has been on the human side of it, the issue of the care of within the community, and the impact that the pandemic has had on our people with regards to health. But with health comes the mental health problems that we've discussed. On top of that, we have an excellent section, excellent department. We should be proud of the Economic Development Department, the Falkirk Council, as well as for example, the training unit, the impact that they've had in terms of alleviating some of the problems that are caused by the loss of employment, loss of jobs, and the impact that we have in the trying to stabilise employers and maintain the maximum number of jobs. It's a fantastic unit, and it's a fantastic achievement that they've managed to secure a number of not just existing jobs, but some new jobs as well, and some new initiatives with regards to, for example, pursuing the issue of the repopulation of the town centres. So we recognise that this shows that all areas of the council are working together in conjunction with us. So that's to be welcomed, and the challenge for us is to make sure that when this is over, that we don't regress to previous practices, and that the changes that have been positive for us as a community are put in place.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, then I think everybody's had their say. So we're agreed to note the report, but before I go, could I just say this, that while we all stand up and salute the department here and the wonderful work they do, I think we've got to say as well that all our communities, individuals and organisations and groups that have been formed within the community to support one another has been fundamental in getting us through this pandemic. And I would like to take this opportunity once again to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hopefully the virus will be successful. And other than that, thank you very much for your attendance today. Thank you.